The anime begins by showing us a ruthless battle where a middle-aged man named Eftal fights alongside 3 other great warriors, aiding the hero to defeat the Demon King. After their victory, in recognition for their efforts, the king himself gives them the Sages of Fire, Earth, Water, and Wind, the titles reserved for the strongest of mages, the 4 emperors. In this world, only those of noble blood can earn the title Emperor, and even if these titles are only applicable in the world of magic, they are still being bestowed upon them. Eftal is in disbelief that he got such an incredible reward for his efforts, but he's honored to receive the title. The king gives him a crown, saying that in the world of magic, though he may not be the mightiest, he still has been given the title of Emperor, so from now on, he may call himself the Lightning Emperor. Eftal accepts his new title with tears in his eyes, and after all 4 warriors are crowned, they receive a round of applause from all the citizens. After 40 years studying magic, in that moment, Eftal's efforts were recognized in the greatest way possible, so he's completely moved to tears. Years after that, even as an old man, Eftal dedicates his time to training every day, while also teaching children everything he knows about magic. All his students train their balance and control by casting spells with rocks on their heads. Eftal warns them that if they can't focus, they won't be able to maintain their magic circle while chanting. After this difficult task, Eftal decides to make them try the level 4 spells again, but one of his best students, Merlin, stops him and asks him if he won't get some rest before doing anything else. Eftal is a little surprised to see her so concerned, but he tries to play it off and tells her that he's not tired at all. Her concerned expression doesn't disappear, so Eftal recalls the moment he picked her up when she was just a baby. After a devastating battle, he found a demon mother and her child, who were caught up in the destruction and chaos. Eftal feels a little conflicted because Merlin probably doesn't remember, but he killed so many of her clan, and now she's looking at him with such worry. He decides to put that aside and tells the kids that they'll go over their 4-level spells, but Merlin speaks up once again, asking him to teach them level 6 spells instead. The rest of the kids obviously complain because they just learned level 5 recently, and it's too soon to learn more advanced magic. Eftal isn't surprised at all because Merlin has always been very spirited, and she's always eager to learn and improve her magic. Merlin agrees and explains that it's because she's the best student of Eftal, the Lightning Emperor. Eftal looks a little thoughtful after hearing that title, but he doesn't say anything about it and simply moves on to the level 4 spells, telling her that there's no rush and that the fundamentals are important. Merlin looks a little frustrated because she actually thinks she needs to hurry, but she decides not to argue any further. However, later, after training, she ventures alone into the forest, armed only with her staff and great resolve. The sounds of the forest are intimidating and everything is too dark, but Merlin convinces herself that she isn't scared. After a while, she finally reaches a cave in the depths of the forest, determined to defeat the monster in there so she can truly call herself the Lightning Emperor's best student. That way, she'll be able to teach everyone so Eftal doesn't have to, and he can relax and get some rest. Merlin walks into the cave with determination, but things escalate quickly, and in no time, she finds herself running from that monster in the forest. Level 4 magic didn't work at all, but she still thinks she's got one more chance to make this work. Merlin stops running and turns around to face the monster, chanting a long spell to cast a level 6 magic spell, Thunderbolt. After putting a lot of focus into it, Merlin is happy to see that it actually worked, and she was able to hit the monster with a level 6 lightning. However, unfortunately for her, not even a level 6 magic spell is enough to defeat this monster, and Merlin clearly doesn't know any better, so she just tries to run away. Before she can flee, the monster attacks her with its claws, making her fall and cornering her, leaving her with no escape. Just when she thought it was over for her, Merlin suddenly hears the sound of thunder, and that's when Eftal shows himself before her. He's not happy at all though, because he told her to stay away from this forest several times. His harsh reprimand clearly scares her, so Merlin quickly apologizes, regretting what she's done. Eftal manages to calm down, but he firmly reminds her that she has the greatest potential among all his students. However, she's in too much of a hurry, and power she rushes to master is no power at all, because it'll slip right through her fingers. Merlin jumps in fear when she suddenly sees the monster looming behind him, but Eftal clarifies that he's in the middle of a lecture and he can't be interrupted. Just like that, he casts a level 10 magic spell, completely exterminating the monster with a powerful lightning. Even after returning home, Merlin is still thinking about that spell, amazed by how strong her master is. Eftal asks her to forget about it and go to bed already, because she's done enough study for today. However, before she can leave the room, he suddenly collapses and coughs up blood. Merlin is immediately alarmed, and Eftal knows that she saw the blood on his hand, so now she knows about the sickness he was trying to hide. To his surprise, Merlin confesses that she had already noticed before, which is why she wanted to learn as fast as she could. Eftal finally understands why she's been working so hard all this time, and why she was in so much of a hurry. Merlin asks him to take care of himself and get as much rest as he can, but Eftal doesn't let her finish and clarifies that he has little time left and no time to rest. This is something Merlin clearly doesn't understand, so she asks him why he's still training his magic even when he's so sick. Without thinking too much about it, Eftal ruffles her hair and decides to be honest, saying that he wants to train the talented students who come after him, like her. He confesses that he wanted to be the strongest in the world, and if every mage wants to be the greatest of them all, then he is no exception. Unfortunately, he knows that he is never going to achieve that. Merlin immediately protests, tests, reminding him that he's incredibly strong because the Lightning Emperor is the strongest of them all, and even today, he did a level 10 spell so easily. Merlin trails off mid-sentence, but Eftal already knows what she's trying to say. However, he knows very well that compared to the younger ones and their talents, he is way behind. Even during the battle against the Demon King, only he, the oldest, was ever struggling. Merlin's expression turns sad when she realizes, so she decides not to say anything else for now. A few days later, one of Eftal's students rushes to inform him that the Flame Emperor has finished his theory of magical aptitude. Eftal quickly checks the details, because the discovery of one's magical aptitude has long been thought impossible, but now, he's shocked to see how it's done. He wouldn't expect anything less from the Flame Emperor though, since he's always known he truly is a genius. After delivering the information, the kid asks him what he will do now, and Eftal tells him that it is time to give it a try since it's worth testing. Once all his students have gathered around him, Eftal places 4 test tubes on the table to test the theory immediately. After reading the paper, he decides to start with Merlin and plucks 4 hairs from her head to place them inside each test tube, immersing it in a special magic water treated for each element: fire, earth, water, and wind. As soon as Merlin's hair comes into contact with the special magic water, the test tubes suddenly emit an intense glow, and the water in each of them changes color. All the kids are surprised to see this sudden change, and they notice that 2 of the test tubes are shining, though they don't really know what it means. Eftal explains that the paper says that the strength of the light and the depth of the color indicate a rank between E and S. Green and blue are glowing and brightly colored, which means Merlin has S rank in both water and wind. The other test tubes are red and brown, so the students quickly understand that fire is C rank and earth is B rank. Eftal confirms it, clearly amazed, and he notices that it doesn't seem to mean much to Merlin, but he has raised her since she was a baby, so he knows. Given what he knows about Merlin's magical aptitude, the results of this magical aptitude test are 100% accurate. The current way they learn magic involves making a student study basic spells of all types, and after a certain time, they decide what they believe their aptitude to be. But now they will be able to know the minute they start school. Better yet, they'll know what they are best at the moment they are born, which means they can become much stronger. Without wasting more time, Eftal decides to go next, asking his students to help him do the aptitude test. Merlin tells him that he doesn't need to because he's one of the 4 emperors, but the other students disagree since they're very curious about it and they think it must be amazing. They're all clearly eager to see, and Eftal also wants to know, because even if he can't reach the highest level of magic, he wants to know if he ever had the talent to do it. He's worked dozens, if not hundreds of times harder than anyone else, and he's sure the other emperors worked hard too, but he put in considerably more effort than they did. With this in mind, he's really looking forward to his aptitude test results, so he waits for his students to cut his hair and find out. However, to his surprise, when his students place his hair in the test tubes, the magic water remains colorless. This clearly confuses everyone, so one of his students reads the paper and says that colorless apparently means no aptitude. Even knowing this, he's sure there must be something wrong with it, because there's no way he could have 0 aptitude. Eftal agrees, still in denial, because no aptitude means that none of the spirits have blessed him. He doesn't understand why though, considering he's the Lightning Emperor and that he's come this far with his own magic. Merlin notices his distress and tries to reassure him, saying that they may have done it wrong, so they should try again. Of course, given how desperate he is and how close he is to crashing out, Eftal instantly agrees and decides to try a second time, saying that they must have made a mistake. Despite this, the vials remain colorless, no matter how many times he tries, making it clear that it was not a mistake. Eftal becomes more and more frustrated, unable to understand how something like this could be possible. He soon realizes that it always took him longer than the rest to learn magic, and only his unending effort made him better than any of them. With resignation, he understands that the reason he couldn't beat the other emperors, and the reason they continuously surpassed him, was because he had no magical aptitude. That's the only reason, and it was so simple all this time, but he just didn't see it. After this realization, Eftal's sickness takes a toll on his body, causing him to collapse again. Merlin gets concerned and quickly tries to help him, but this time, Eftal's condition doesn't get better. He becomes bedridden after that, and through his agony, he doesn't let Merlin see him that way, so every time she tries to bring him water or food, he just asks her to stay out. Eftal has never looked this bad before, and he now understands that even though he always thought he could reach the highest levels of magic someday, he couldn't overcome the wall called talent. In that moment, he loses all his wishes and his hope, but with pain, he realizes that he had no wishes or hope from the start. Eftal can only feel pain and despair as he understands just how pathetic he is, and he regrets not having more time now. He thought that effort would get him there, but now he can only cry in frustration until he finally breathes his last. The moment Eftal's life comes to an end, a skill called Indomitable suddenly activates, taking him to a vast, white space. He doesn't look old anymore, and he's able to stand on his own, realizing that he completely forgot he even had this skill, since it was over 50 years ago. A goddess descends from above to greet him, but Eftal already knows who she is, and he knows that this is where they first met, after he ended his life in a different world from the last one. The goddess admits that it's been a long time, and his skill, Indomitable, gave him the power to work toward his goal without ever giving up. Eftal didn't remember that, but now he understands why he could never give up on anything. The goddess tells him that it's time for his second reincarnation, and once again, he will be able to have 2 starting bonus skills. She offers him the 2 times growth skill to make things easier for him, but to her surprise, Eftal declines and explains that he's still got his magical knowledge, so if he has the time to put in effort and get better, then that's enough. The goddess is pleased to hear that response, because it's just what she had expected to hear from him. After all, he rose to the rank of the 4 emperors, even though he had no aptitude. That wasn't due to his skill alone, it was thanks to the strength of his will. Eftal clarifies that he wouldn't go that far, so the goddess asks him if he's ready in that case. The moment he confirms it, the space around him starts glowing, and the goddess wishes him a wonderful journey. Eftal then wakes up in the body of a 4-year-old kid, realizing that he's reincarnated. He lived 4 years of his life as Eftal, completely clueless, but now his memories are coming back to him again all of the sudden. Eftal decides to explore the house and looks at himself in the mirror, knowing that he's the Lightning Emperor. As he tries to process everything, his mother suddenly approaches him from behind to take him by surprise with a loving hug, asking him if he slept well. Eftal fights for his life and tries to breathe, so his mother finally releases him and apologizes, saying that breakfast is ready. Once he recovers, Eftal keeps his cool and decides to have breakfast with his mother, still thinking about everything. He knows that thanks to the second reincarnation skill that the goddess gave him, he is now on his 3rd life. Ever since he turned 4, memories of the old Eftal have started to return, so he's decided that this time, he's going to truly master magic. Just as he makes this decision, Eftal suddenly remembers how to prepare water for a magical aptitude test, so he quickly finishes his breakfast and runs straight to his room to try it, wanting to know what aptitude he has in this life. Unfortunately, just like in his last life, the magic water remains colorless, letting him know he has no aptitude at all. Eftal decides to walk outside and lets himself collapse onto the grass, feeling defeated and resigned. Clearly disappointed, he realizes that it's likely he's going to hit his limits when he learns level 10 spells, just like last time. While he thinks about that, a dragon suddenly flies right over him, and he notices it has crimson eyes, which means someone made it mad. Armored soldiers chase after the dragon on horseback, saying that it's heading for the capital, so they can't let it get away. Eftal runs to help as soon as he finds out the town's in danger, but his short legs quickly remind him of his current situation. He could have done something at his peak, but now he is just 4 years old, so he doesn't know what he can do, especially without an aptitude. The dragon rapidly approaches the capital, so Eftal stares at his hands, feeling powerless. If he had known this would happen, he would have been reborn in a body that could use magic. After all, that way he could use that old spell he made, his own original spell, level 10, Eftal. As soon as he thinks of that spell, his hand suddenly starts glowing, and a perfect magic circle forms above him, launching a powerful lightning bolt that directly strikes the dragon, burning it to a crisp. Eftal falls backward in shock, trying to process what he just did. When the dragon falls to the ground, the armored soldiers surround it, trying to figure out what hit it. Eftal sees the fallen dragon to confirm that it really worked, and then looks at his own hand, from which a little electricity comes out. Only then, he understands that he apparently was reborn into this world, able to wield magical abilities from the peak of his old life, even at the age of 4. Now, it's been 3 years since Eftal's past self reincarnated into this new body, and he has done a lot of research. What he's learned is that the world he is in now is the same one he lived in, but 400 years later. One day, Eftal's brother, Fraser, decides to visit him and his mother to check on them and make sure they're all right, giving them some money for the expenses this month. Eftal lives alone with his mother, but Fraser always makes sure they have everything they need. After talking to his mother, Fraser checks on Eftal and notices that he's reading a really difficult book for his age. Eftal explains that these books are really interesting to him, so Fraser tells him that he'll bring him some books as a gift next time in that case. That makes him really happy, so his mother smiles and mentions that they can tell who his father is. Fraser agrees and says that he's sure Eftal doesn't quite understand what the books say yet, but he has no doubt he'll master them soon, and their father will be very pleased. Eftal decides to ask him when he'll meet his father, but Fraser apologizes and tells him that their father is very busy and it's hard for him to make time. Eftal is a little disappointed to hear that, because he's never met his father, but he knows that he is Duke Orcott, an important person in the field of magic in the Kingdom of Azul. He's a descendant of his past self, the Lightning Emperor, so he is curious what he's like. However, his mother has no magical aptitude, so his wife and the other mistresses dislike her. This is a mage family, so Eftal doesn't understand why Orcott would have a child with someone with no magical aptitude in the first place. His wife disliked them so much that she sent him and his mother to live out there in the middle of nowhere. In other words, Eftal's father's family doesn't recognize him as his son, which is why he hasn't been able to see him. Fraser notices his sad expression and apologizes again, saying that he will talk to their father about it. Eftal agrees and simply accepts with resignation, because it's the only thing he can do. Fraser is the second son of Duke Orcott's wife, but he took pity on them and now looks after them, so he's a kind man. After making sure he's okay, Fraser asks Eftal's mother if there is anything else he can help them with. She assures him that they're fine and that he takes good care of them already, so he doesn't have to worry. Eftal is still not completely happy about the situation, but no matter what's going on around him, he doesn't care as long as he can study magic again. His mother decides to prepare some tea for them as they speak, and Fraser asks him what he wants to do in the future with all that studying he's doing right now. Without Without hesitating for a moment, Eftal jumps and exclaims that he's the descendant of a legendary mage, so when he's 15 years old, he wants to go to the Magic Academy in the capital and study magic. Before he can finish his sentence, his mother covers his mouth to silence him and mentions that he's like her and has no magical aptitude. Eftal continues trying to speak, but he knows that in this era, magical aptitude tests are normal, so his lack of aptitude is already known. His mother doesn't let go of him and explains that she's thinking of having him learn swordsmanship and go to military school. Fraser instantly gets excited and tells her that it's a great idea, because he graduated from military school at the top of his class, even though he may not seem like it. He explains that at first, he chose it because he was young and wanted to rebel against being in a magical family, but he thinks in the end it was the right choice. After all, magic swordsmen are very rare, so the military takes good care of them. Fraser is already motivated by the idea, so he mentions that he's got some time today, and he can see how Eftal does with a sword. Before Eftal can protest, his mother excitedly accepts, so he has no other choice than to go with his brother to the forest to practice. Fraser gives him his sword and asks him to wave it in the air, putting more strength into his wrists. Eftal follows his instructions as best as he can, even though this is not his field, and Fraser tells him that he has a lot of aptitude for swordsmanship. At this point, Eftal finally understands why his brother was teaching him only basic education and military science. It was all because he wanted him to go to military school from the start, since he's probably worried about his lack of magical aptitude. But even so, Eftal still wants to go to the Magic Academy, so he decides to stop the swordsmanship practice to tell his brother what he really wants. When Fraser hears that he actually wants to go to the Magic Academy, his expression turns sad for a moment, but he kindly tries to convince him otherwise. He kneels before his little brother and explains that people are good at some things and bad at others, so he doesn't have to feel bad about that. Eftal quickly clarifies that he already knows that, and he's aware he has no magical aptitude, but he still has mana, and he can use magic too, so he wants to go no matter what. Deep down, Eftal knows that it's been 400 years since then, so if he goes to the Magic Academy, he's sure to find a clue to break past his magical limits. Faced with Eftal's insistence, Fraser has no other option, so he tells him that he'll cast a spell right now, and if he can replicate it at all, then he'll personally recommend him for the Magic Academy. Eftal quickly accepts the deal and happily thanks him, saying that he will try his best. Fraser looks at him with a sad expression and silently apologizes, because he'll make sure to cast a spell impossible to replicate for him. He knows it's a little cruel, but he hopes this will help him see reality and understand. Fraser asks him to watch carefully and then summons the wind elemental, Sylphie, asking them to grant him their blessing. Eftal is a little confused to see that he's chanting an incantation, but he doesn't say a word and decides to continue watching. After making some extra moves, Fraser casts a level 2 spell called Wind Edge, launching a strong ring of wind that manages to take down a tree. Even though it was only a level 2 spell, he ends up completely exhausted, but he's sure that spell must seem like a miracle to a kid. To his surprise, Eftal just stares at the fallen tree and asks him if that's all, completely unimpressed. Fraser laughs nervously and tries to tell him that using magic of this level requires a lot of effort. However, before he can finish his sentence, Eftal raises his hand, and without using any kind of incantation, he casts the same spell and takes down all the trees in front of him in the blink of an eye. Fraser freezes in place, trying to process the fact that a 7-year-old child was able to use magic like that, and instantly, with no incantation. Only a sage who's trained for decades can do something like that, so no 7-year-old should be able to do it. He's never heard of such a thing, so he nervously asks Eftal what he just did. Eftal doesn't understand his confusion at first, but he quickly apologizes, realizing that he was supposed to copy what he did, but it ended up closer to level 4 than level 2. Fraser completely loses his cool and exclaims that level 4 is ultra advanced magic. That only confuses Eftal even more, because he thought level 4 was lesser magic. Fraser quickly asks him how he can use such advanced magic, but Eftal hesitates, because he can't exactly tell him about his reincarnation. With that in mind, he simply tells him that he can't really explain why, but he's kind of adapting the magical knowledge and power he's gained from his studies to this body and brain. Eftal also confesses that he can actually do up to level 10, but Fraser completely freaks out, saying that level 10 magic is lost technology. Fraser then suddenly turns pale, and his soul simply decides to leave his body, so he ends up passing out. Eftal gets a little worried, and he then realizes that he has never let anyone in this life see him use magic, but seeing how Fraser reacted, he can tell something's wrong. When he defeated the dragon, he noticed it too, since they all said that a miracle saved them, simply because they couldn't explain what happened. Eftal is now sure that something is not right with this era, and he hasn't figured out what it is. He decides to investigate about magical levels after returning home, wanting to find out what's going on. He doesn't know what happened over these past 400 years, but after reading some books, he learns that magic culture has declined a lot since then, for some reason. Casting spells without incantations isn't considered common anymore, which explains why his brother passed out. Fraser suddenly wakes up startled, screaming his name and nervously rambling, saying that a 7-year-old child was able to cast spells with no incantations. Eftal plays dumb and asks him what he's talking about, explaining that after he used that amazing spell to blow up a tree, a fragment of it hit him in the head and he passed out. Fraser laughs nervously, but he decides to believe him, because there is no way a child could do that in the first place. Eftal decided decided he would study in secret after that and decided to play along with Frazier about going to military school, at least for a while. However, he's having a hard time with the swordsmanship practices because he doesn't really want to go to military school. Even so, his indomitable skill from his past life might have warped his personality, so the more times he's defeated, the angrier he gets. That's why, even after he falls, Eftal stands back up and asks his brother to let him try one more time. Frazier praises his spirit and continues, defeating him again and again without mercy, all to help him learn. By age 10, Eftal started to think that he wanted to get stronger with martial arts in a way that went beyond just magic. One day, during his training, he waits at the foot of a waterfall until a giant tree trunk falls. Before the tree trunk hits the water, Eftal uses his sword to slice it into pieces in a matter of seconds. He's starting to think that using a sword is a lot of fun, and he thinks the strongest magic swordsman would be a pretty cool title too. Frazier is currently teaching him how to fight 3 times a week, and today he lets him know that they'll do something a little different and have a special lesson. He explains that he's called a special coach to teach him in his place today, so he'll learn a few different things. Before Eftal can ask him any questions, a tall, intimidating man shows up right behind him, silently evaluating him. Frazier informs him that his name is Moria, and he's the former knight commander for the Kingdom of Azul. Eftal nervously greets him, but Moria doesn't waste any time and simply asks him to attack him however he likes, saying that he'll let him have the first shot. Frazier just wishes him good luck, letting him know that he has no other choice than to fight. Moria walks away from him, waiting for him to attack while he's not looking, but no matter what he said, Eftal doesn't see any openings, and he knows that this man is strong. After a few seconds, Moria complains when he sees him just standing there, even after he came all this way. Since he apparently can't move, Moria decides to come to him instead and attacks Eftal without a doubt. He's not holding back even against a child, so Eftal has no other choice than to move away as fast as he can. He notices that Moria is fast because he couldn't even see his sword move at all, and he barely was able to dodge. Moria tells him that he's too slow to respond, so Eftal decides to use a physical ability enhancement that allows him to move faster at once, and Moria is surprised that he can use that at his age. Eftal attacks him with his sword, taking him by surprise, and even though Moria is able to block him, he's actually impressed and can see why Frazier recommended him. Frazier tells him that he realized when he was teaching him that there is a faint amount of mana in Eftal's hand when he holds a sword. He has no magical aptitude but can control his mana within his body surprisingly smoothly, almost like a real mage or sage. Eftal keeps his thoughts to himself, even though he actually was a sage in his past life. On the other hand, Moria can't hold back his laugh, unable to believe that he can't use magic but can control his mana like a mage. Eftal tries to keep his anger at bay, knowing very well that he could easily win if he used his magic here. Even so, he also knows that it's meaningless to beat him like that, and right now, he wants to beat him in combat. He suddenly charges at him and tries to attack him while his guard is down, but Moria easily blocks him and tells him that he lacks skill, and more than that, height and muscle. That is why it will be 3 more years before he's a match for him. Despite this, Eftal still tries to hold his ground as best as he can, and he then suddenly moves to the side to make Moria lose balance. As soon as he does, Eftal grabs him by the arm and slams him to the ground in a second. Moria is completely speechless, but Eftal is almost as surprised as him because his body moved on its own. He then remembers that he once learned to do throws in a different world than this one, though he didn't think it'd come in handy here. Moria stands back up and simply laughs, saying that a loss is a loss, so he passed the test. Eftal still doesn't know what he's talking about, so Frazier tells him that he forgot to mention something important. He then reveals that Moria is the head of the prestigious Azul School of Military Science, which means, starting from age 15, Eftal will be a student at a proper military school. Moria clarifies that he lost the fight, but he won the sword fight, so he still has stuff to learn to surpass him. Eftal can't hide his surprise, and he's overwhelmed by all this information because he doesn't understand how this happened. Years later, now that Eftal is 14 years old, he's still training in the forest every day, even if the weather is bad. During a rainy day, he decides to cast his level 10 original spell, Eftal, destroying a great part of the forest and leaving a crater in the ground. With that, he confirms that there is still a bit of a time lag when he gets to level 9 or 10. He considers rainy days perfect for his training because he can practice his magic with nobody noticing. Despite that, after casting that level 10 spell, Frazier comes to him running, saying that he just saw a terrible lightning strike. Eftal nervously plays along and assures him he's just fine, so he doesn't have to worry. Frazier finally calms down, but Eftal knows that he made a mistake because he almost scared his brother again. With a stern expression, Frazier reminds him that he's going to military school next year, so he must make sure he doesn't get hurt. Eftal quickly agrees and then realizes that ever since that entrance examination, it's been decided that he's going to military school. In this world, he's an adult at age 15, and right now, he's 14, but he can't go to military school. With magical aptitude tests being everywhere now, he knows that it'll be hard for him to pursue the path of magic. That's why, when he turns 15, he's leaving home, and he'll get to the Magic Academy on his own. Right after making that decision, Frazier tells him that he has good news today, and informs him that their father is going to finally meet him. Eftal's mother couldn't be happier about the news, and she even cries of joy, saying that it's all because Frazier has taught him so much about military science and swordsmanship. Unable to contain her emotions, she hugs Eftal and tells him that he's finally gotten strong enough for his father to recognize him. Eftal didn't think there was much point in meeting a man who's ignored him for 14 years, but seeing how happy they are, he can't decline the invitation because he doesn't want to make them sad. In no time, the three of them go to Duke Orkot's mansion, and Eftal is actually excited to meet his own descendant. However, after his father sees him for the very first time in 14 years, his only reaction is silence. The mood in the room quickly turns uncomfortable, but Eftal surprises everyone and steps forward, introducing himself and happily greeting his father, saying that he's always wanted to meet him. His father immediately corrects him and asks him to call him Duke Orkot because he's never recognized him, and he brings shame to their family. Eftal's excitement quickly vanishes, and he can't believe that's his reaction after meeting his son for the first time in 14 years. Orkot then complains about him because he has no magical aptitude even though he's a descendant of the Lightning Emperor, so the Lightning Emperor must be crying for sure. Eftal silently confirms that he is indeed crying because he finally met his descendant, and the guy is a total jerk. Orkot then mentions that he's heard he was given a special invitation to military school. When Eftal confirms it, Orkot laughs and says that's great news, and he genuinely looks happy about it, which makes Eftal think that maybe he's not so bad. He completely discards that idea when Orkot says that now he doesn't have to pay for his food anymore, and if he's going by invitation, he'll get all his meals and lodging for free, and starting in his 3rd year, he'll even get a stipend, so he doesn't have to spend any money on him. Orkot assures him that everything will be great as long as he doesn't bring any shame to the family name. Eftal can't believe that this guy actually called them here just to say that, but the situation turns worse when Orkot asks his son, Joachim, for a favor. He explains that even though he only had Eftal on a whim, people will think he's part of his family, so he must see if he's strong enough to avoid embarrassing himself at military school. Joachim smiles wickedly, understanding that he only needs to teach the dog a lesson, and he will gladly do it. Fraser, of course, tries to protest against this, but Eftal now finally understands what this is about. Without wasting any time, they all head to the garden. But Fraser warns Eftal that he must be careful, even if this is supposed to be a mock battle. After all, even if he doesn't look like it, Joachim had top marks in sword fighting at school, which means he's very skilled. Before the mock battle begins, Fraser asks Eftal to surrender immediately if he feels he can't win, because this could be very dangerous. Eftal agrees without a problem, but deep down, he just thinks this is pain, and he's got no other choice. Joachim warns him that he had the choice to run away, and then throws a wooden sword at him. When Eftal catches it, he immediately notices just how heavy it is, so Joachim explains it is a hardwood sword. They don't usually use them because a heavy blow is enough to shatter bone or cave in a skull if it lands just right. Joachim smiles deviously and tells him that he surely knows what that means, but to his surprise, Eftal has no idea what he's talking about. That makes Joachim lose his patience, so he throws a tantrum and exclaims that both he and his mother are morons. He then explains that he, as the eldest son of the true family, will teach him and his fool of a mother a lesson because nobody likes them. After all, his mother, Iria, has no magical aptitude, and she begged Orkot to let her give birth to him, but he doesn't have any magical aptitude either. Joachim tells Eftal that his mother brought shame to the family and he'd like to kill her, but he'll settle for killing him instead. Before the battle, Joachim clarifies that he'll give him a handicap as a little favor so he can be the first to attack. Eftal has remained silent to all of Joachim's provocations, but he can barely contain his rage at the fact that these two jerks are his descendants. He doesn't waste the opportunity and decides to make the first move, attacking Joachim head-on with a hardwood sword. To his surprise, Joachim only barely managed to react since he apparently took him off guard. Eftal continues attacking him, but his moves make Joachim back down as he blocks him with his sword, clearly intimidated. This confuses Eftal a little, so he starts wondering if he really knows how to use a sword or if it was all a lie. After several attempts, Joachim finally manages to properly block one of his moves, and he has the nerve to mock him for that. However, Eftal activates physical ability enhancement, which allows him to overpower him. Joachim panics and tries to stand his ground, wondering if Eftal is really the same kid he was a moment ago. No matter how hard he tries, he can't keep up with such monstrous strength, so Eftal easily breaks through his sword and hits him right in the face, breaking his nose in an instant. While Joachim is on the ground, Eftal warns him that if he ever insults his mother again, he will kill him without a doubt. After that, he goes back to normal and approaches his mother with a smile, saying that they can go now. Even Iria is shocked by what she just saw, so she asks him if he's the Eftal she knows. Eftal assures her he's the same as always, so his mother decides to believe him and smiles back at him. Before leaving, Eftal talks to his father, though Orkot flinches as soon as he looks at him, completely terrified. Eftal simply thanks him for inviting him today, so his father quickly dismisses him and nervously wishes him good luck at military school next year. 2 weeks later, Eftal continues living a peaceful life with his mother, even though he was pretty sure they would try to get back at them somehow. However, that peace suddenly ends one day when Fraser shows up at their doorstep holding a baby. That's when we see what happened earlier in the capital, where Fraser informs his forces that the Holy Knights and Azul Army have set out to do battle with their neighbors. He explains that while they're gone, it is up to them and the Royal Guard to defend the capital. Maria discreetly asks him if they have to bring in kids from military school to protect the city, and Fraser confirms it. After all, there is information that the minister's faction is planning to assassinate the prince while their main forces are away. That information clearly shocks Moria, but before he can say anything, a guard suddenly barges in and exclaims that southern barbarians are attacking the capital. They all hear an explosion just then, so Fraser immediately reacts and orders his forces to get the prince somewhere safe, saying that they must act quickly. After that, he ended up at Iria's house, so he now apologizes to her for startling her and explains that it was very sudden and this was the only safe place he could think of. Eftal takes a moment to assess the situation, knowing that since the last king of Azul's second son was more talented than the eldest, the second son is the current king, and the eldest is the crown minister. The second son had no male heirs, and the eldest son was almost certain to inherit the throne. However, the current king had a son, and now the minister's faction wants him dead. Despite this, something doesn't click, so Eftal asks his brother how barbarians got into the capital when he strengthened his defenses. Fraser tells him that he believes their father is behind this, because if the throne changes hands, he'll be the one to benefit the most in terms of status and power. They can't go back to the capital now, so they'll need to cross the border and get the prince to safety with their main army. With that in mind, Fraser and Moria decide to leave with the crown prince when the sun sets, thanking Iria for everything. Just before they leave, Eftal asks them to take him with them, and even though his mother is a little surprised, Moria easily accepts, saying that they need all the help they can get now. Eftal remembers well how the then king gave them supplies in their battle against the demon king 400 years ago, so he has a duty to protect this country. Iria can't help but let out a few tears, so Eftal apologizes to his mother for making her worry as he leaves their home, knowing that he can't let his father and his men get away with this. The next day, he continues walking with Moria and Fraser, who tells him that they'll head through the Nile forest and across the Morales plains, and then they'll be at the border. Eftal can't help but think how strange everything is though, because there is not a single animal in the forest, and it is all too quiet. Both Fraser and Moria think the same, and that's when they suddenly hear thunder. They clearly don't know what's going on, but they know that the most foolish thing they can do is stay here, so they decide to leave the woods fast. After running non-stop for a while, they finally reach the edge of the forest, but Fraser suddenly stops them when he sees an entire army waiting for them. He knew they'd set a trap somewhere, but he wasn't expecting something like this. Moria can't believe what he's seeing, because that's the Duke's personal mage division, and Orcott himself is leading them. Just when they think about heading back, Eftal warns them that the path behind them is burning. Fraser then understands that the sound they heard was them setting fire to the forest because they want to drive them out. Moria wonders if there's a way to get the prince to safety somehow, but he knows they have nowhere to run right now. Having no other choice, Fraser tells them that he'll go persuade his father to stand down because he's sure he's not that bad of a person. He walks out of the forest with his hands raised, letting his father know he's unarmed, and asking him to stop this and resolve things through dialogue. Orcott doesn't say a thing as he speaks, but Fraser insists and tells him that there's still time, so they should forget this ever happened and go back to the capital. Joachim, whose face is still recovering, asks his father what they'll do, but Orcott simply stands up and tells him that his own son is asking to speak to him, so he'll go to him. Fraser is hopeful when he sees his father walking up to him, because that means he is willing to talk, and he must understand what he's saying. However, Orcott tells him that the only thing he understands is that he's in his way. Once he's close enough, he uses a magic device to give Fraser an electric shock, immediately knocking him out. Orcott then laughs and asks his mage division to burn it all, not caring about his son on the ground. Moria sees the ritual formation they're doing and explains that it's the most powerful spell, bearing the name of one of the legendary 4 emperors, level 6, Eftal. Eftal doesn't even listen to him and immediately runs to save Fraser, but Moria stops him right away, and a great explosion sets everything on fire in a matter of seconds. Fraser is nowhere to be seen now, so Eftal can't believe what his father did to his own son, who was only trying to protect a baby. When he thinks about all the memories with his brother, Eftal can't contain his rage anymore, and even Moria gets worried when he notices how different he seems now. Eftal decides to stop pretending just then, and says that he's going to teach them what real magic is. Moria tries to warn him that it is dangerous out there, but Eftal doesn't listen and simply approaches the fire, casting a level 9 spell, Cositis. That spell alone gets rid of the fire by freezing the whole forest and the ground in a second. Even the mage division finds this hard to understand, because that's a spell of unbelievable power. Even Orcott has no idea what's going on, so Eftal assumes that in this world, they've never even heard of anyone casting a spell like this on their own. He admits that water magic isn't his specialty, but they couldn't even stop that. That fact angers him even more, because he thought he had taught his sons how to use magic and how to fight. Orcott realizes just then that he's Eftal, so he panics and immediately tells his mage division that he is the enemy, so they must show him the terror of a magical division. All the mages follow his orders at once and cast a level 5 spell called Explosion Arrow, releasing a full barrage. Eftal doesn't even bother to move, so Orcott laughs loudly and sings victory, only to see him completely unharmed when the smoke disperses. This clearly disappoints Eftal, who tells them that they can't have expected that to hit him. All the mages are terrified to see that he's alive after that, because that was a direct hit. Eftal simply explains that there is such a thing as an always-on magic defense circle, but they really don't know anything. That only irritates him more, and he wonders just how ignorant they can be. Still not understanding a thing, Orcott gets nervous and asks his magical division to hit him with their strongest attack. The mages have no choice choice but to follow his orders, so they cast a level 6 spell, Eftal, releasing a focused blast right on him. Eftal doesn't move from his place and simply says that it's insulting to have his name used for something like that. To counter it, he casts a level 7 extra magic guard, protecting him from the impact of lightning. All the magic division freezes in fear, unable to believe that this kid just negated a legendary magic spell in an instant. They all see him as a monster now, so Eftal just scoffs, saying that they really are pathetic. In less than a second, he disappears from their sight, moving at lightning speed as he gets rid of the mages one by one, using only his sword. As he attacks them without mercy, Eftal feels glad that his brother Frazier took the time to train him, because he actually likes using a sword. He decides to practice empowering his sword with magic, so he casts a level 2 spell called Riot Bomb, infusing his sword with lightning. One of the mages panics and nervously tries to cast a spell to save his life, but Eftal doesn't hesitate for a second and immediately turns him into ashes with his sword. As soon as they all realize what he can do, all the mages stop fighting and decide to run for their lives. Eftal just smiles and asks them if their mother never teach them not to turn their back during battle. He then tells them that he'll show them one last thing before they die, and casts a spell that gathers dark clouds in the sky above them. The mages stop running immediately when they notice that he's controlling the weather, because that means he's using lost magic and divine power. Eftal clarifies that those aren't just clouds, because his magic is not that boring trash that controls static electricity like theirs. He then reveals that what he controls is lightning itself, and casts his own original spell, level 10, Eftal. In a matter of seconds, the whole magic division is wiped out along with everything else in the battlefield, except Orcott and his son. Eftal protected them with a magical barrier, but even after all of that, Joachim reproaches him for attacking the Duke's mages, saying that he can't get away with that. Eftal ignores him and simply puts him to sleep with a spell, making Orcott feel more terrified than before. Despite how scared he is, Orcott still gets defensive, but Eftal accuses him of attempting to assassinate the crown prince and tells him that it wouldn't make for a good ending if the conspirator died here alongside his men. Orcott threatens him and warns him that if he attacks him, then he's a traitor to the army. However, Eftal doesn't even let him finish and gives him an electric shock, saying that he's not showing any mercy to the kind of scum who would kill his own son. Just like that, the coup attempt ended in failure, and both Orcott and Joachim were publicly executed afterwards. Despite everything that happened, Eftal is just glad to see that Frazier is actually alive and well, still recovering from his injuries. When he sees him in the capital, he immediately runs up to him and asks him if he's really okay to be up and about already. Frazier greets him and assures him that he's fine, though he admits that he never thought a treasured family necklace would end up saving his life. When Eftal sees the necklace, he quickly recognizes it as Oberon's guard, which used to be his. That old item kept him alive somehow, so Frazier says that he owes the Lightning Emperor his life, apparently. Eftal can't help but tear up a little, really feeling glad that his brother is alive right now. Without a doubt, he hugs Frazier, taking him by surprise as he thanks him for being alive. Later, there was a talk of stripping Orcott's title after the coup, but because Frazier risked his life to save the crown prince, the peerage remained after the execution. And with Orcott's death, Frazier took over the household. Now that everything has gone back to normal, Eftal decides to show both Frazier and Moria what he really can do with magic. He casts a level 7 spell called Evil Flare, and then another level 7 spell called Chaos Weed. This spell combination manages to split an entire mountain in two, leaving them completely speechless. Frazier can't believe that he cast 2 level 7 spells in a row, and he realizes that this is his little brother's true strength. Eftal apologizes for not telling them before, but Frazier reassures him and tells him that he knows he must have had a good reason for that. Moria agrees and clarifies that if he doesn't want to say it, then he doesn't have to, because with this much power, he's sure he has his secrets. Eftal thinks about the goddess and confirms that he definitely can't tell them he was reincarnated. Fortunately, both Moria and Frazier tell him that this is a secret between the three of them, because it seems best not to use this power in the presence of others. After all, the whole world would be plunged into chaos if someone saw something like this. With that decided, Frazier asks Eftal what he'll do now, and to his surprise, Eftal tells him that he wants to go to magic school. Moria doesn't understand this, especially after seeing how he split an entire mountain in two without effort. He asks him if he really is going to magic school even with that much power, and Eftal confirms it without hesitation. He explains that he wants to get even stronger in a place that is fully equipped for it, and he wants to follow the path of magic. Frazier admits that he can see he has a strong resolve, so he is not opposed to the idea. Seeing that he's serious about this decision, Moria decides to accept it and gives him a hard slap on the back, saying that he will help him train until he turns 15. After all, even if he chooses the path of magic, being handy with a sword is always a good thing, in his opinion. Eftal tries to ignore the pain of that blow to his back and smiles, thanking Moria for the help, since he's going to need it. Just like that, Eftal takes a step forward on the path of magic, planning to become even stronger than he is now. As soon as he turns 15, Eftal's mother tells him that he's an adult now, so he can do what he wants to do, however he wants to do it. She assures him that he's welcome back here anytime, and then hugs him in tears, knowing that this is a goodbye. Eftal hugs her back and thanks her for raising him for 15 years, but even Moria can't help but cry. Frazier tries to comfort him, but Moria clarifies that he got something in his eye and that he's not crying. He bursts into tears again when it's finally time for him him to leave, though, and Fraser asks Eftal not to forget to practice his swordplay. Eftal bows one last time to thank them for everything before leaving, determined to overcome the limits of his talent, and deciding that he won't stop moving forward until he reaches the heights of magic. After some time, he arrives at some town and decides to take a break there to eat something at a tea house. As he tries to relax a little, he hears an old magic tutor praising a young man known as Edwards of the Mad Flame, saying that he's grateful of having such a famous mage coming all this way out to the countryside. The old man excitedly tells him that he hopes he'll teach the students in his class what real magic is. However, Edwards harshly interrupts him and asks him not to speak to him without permission, because he's trying to read right now. The old magic tutor nervously apologizes, but Edwards tells him that he hopes he'd understand the difference in value between a second of his life and his. The poor old man continues apologizing, while Eftal just thinks that this mage is such a self-centered jerk. Edwards stands with arrogance and reminds the old man that even at the age of 20, he's an A rank in the Adventurers Guild, while he's 50 years old and still a C rank. He clarifies that the most he's good for is teaching kids how to use magic out here in the middle of nowhere, so he's merely trash, and that's the problem with country hicks like him. Despite how rude he's being, the old magic tutor apologizes for bothering him when he's busy and mentions that they've prepared a banquet tonight to welcome him. Edwards doesn't even let him finish and stares at him with disgust, asking him not to be ridiculous. He then pulls his slave from her chains and explains that today is a special evening for him and this demon girl. Edwards proudly shows him the mark on her skin and informs him that today is the day her slave crest finishes affixing itself to her body. The old magic tutor quickly understands what he means, knowing that if he fills her with his seed before the crest is affixed, it can ruin the spell. Unfortunately, Eftal also understands exactly what they're talking about, and he's completely disgusted by it, so much that he feels he could vomit. After all, Merlin would have ended up a slave like this girl if he hadn't taken her in when she was a baby. Before he can give it any more thought, a villager suddenly rushes into the tea house to warn everyone that a giant orc has appeared in town. Everyone soon starts panicking when they see the monster, because not even the guild can handle something like that. The old magic tutor tries to reassure everyone, letting them know that Edwards the Mad Flame is here, and that he's an A-rank adventurer, so they have nothing to fear. This helps everyone calm down, so Edwards takes the opportunity to brag, saying that a giant orc is a high B-rank class monster, a lesser life form that is nothing to fear for an A-rank like him. Most of the villagers get excited when they hear that, so Eftal realizes that even 400 years in the future, A-rank adventurers are still amazing. Edwards wastes no time and approaches the giant orc, saying that he'll show them all what true magic is, since it's not something they can see out here in the countryside. He begins with the incantation and summons the spirits of the air, asking them to come in and answer to his spell, manifesting their supreme exploding flames through the contract they made. With that, Edwards casts a level 4 holy flare and manages to strike the giant orc directly. Everyone witnessing this cheers in victory, and Edwards proudly lets them know that was his most powerful magic, an unstoppable level 4 spell, which is not the sort of thing they get to see for free. Just when he thought the show was over, Edwards notices the terrified expressions of the villagers around him, and that's when he sees the giant orc after the smoke disperses, completely unharmed. He can't believe that his most powerful spell did nothing to it, but when he takes a closer look at the monster, he realizes it's the most powerful type of orc, an orc berserker. A level 4 spell could beat a giant orc, but not an orc berserker, so there's no way he can win this. Without wasting any time, Edwards immediately runs away and quickly casts an unbreakable barrier of level 3, trapping the villagers inside the barrier with the monster. Everyone panics when they realize they can't get out, but Edwards just laughs and shamelessly informs them that he's using them as bait, because someone as valuable as himself can't die here. The orc berserker approaches the villagers, so Eftal decides to step in, casting a level 6 spell called Seraph Dispel, which easily breaks the barrier, setting everyone free in a second. Edwards doesn't even understand what just happened or how he did that, and the old magic tutor notices that he used magic with no incantation. Eftal soon realizes his mistake, since he didn't want to stand out like that, but he couldn't just do nothing about it. The orc berserker is still a threat, but everyone is looking now, so he wonders what to do. In no time, he comes up with an idea and decides that he'll use a level 3 spell for camouflage, then follow it right up with a level 9, then they'll think he just used the level 3. That's the perfect plan for him not to stand out, so he wastes no time and casts a level 3 spell, launching a fire attack at the orc berserker. The villagers are shocked that he can use a level 3 spell though, so he still stands out even after that. While everyone's focused on the level 3 spell, Eftal knows it's time to follow it up with the level 9 spell. However, to his surprise, the level 3 spell alone did the trick, easily defeating the orc berserker after setting it on fire. Edwards falls to the ground in shock, wondering how a level 3 spell managed to do that when his level 4 spell didn't work. The old magic tutor explains that unlike his spell, Eftal forged and refined the magic properly, which gave it the power of a level 5 spell. Even he doesn't understand how he managed to do that despite that, since he just looks like he's 14 or 15 years old. Eftal now understands why his spell was so effective, but he already knows that magic forging and refining is the most basic stuff one can do, so he can't believe Edwards didn't even bother to do so. He bets even a level 1 spell could have done it. After all, if only that mage Mage cared enough to refine his magic properly. When everyone gathers around the fallen orc berserker, Eftel realizes he stood out more than he meant to, so he tries to explain that he just got lucky and hit it in the right spot. Fortunately, everyone is focused on the orc berserker, wondering if they can eat it since it smells kind of nice after being on fire for a while. Eftel doesn't miss the opportunity and escapes the area without being seen, assuming that to the average person, it just looks like a normal level 3 spell. Before leaving town, he confronts Edwards and tells him that he should show his elders some respect because that old magic tutor knows the art of magic much better than he does. The old magic tutor is moved to tears by his praise, so he makes sure to thank Eftel for his words. That aside, Eftel also tells Edwards that what he did just now was attempted murder, and thanks to him, it was only attempted, but it's still a serious crime, and criminals don't have the right to own slaves. That's why he must free that demon girl and turn himself in. Having no other choice, Edwards listens to him because he's too terrified to do otherwise, and frees the demon girl he had as a slave. Once that's done, Eftel continues on his way, but now he has a small problem, which is that the demon girl has been following him since he left town. After a while, he decides to stop and confront her, asking her for how long she's going to keep following him. The demon girl finally shows herself and nervously tells him that she wanted to ask him for help with something. She messes up the words at first, but she gathers the courage to ask him to become her master. Eftel panics a little because he doesn't even know what to say to that, but the girl insists and explains that at this rate, she'll be arrested as an escaped slave. Eftel understands the situation since a slave crest can't easily be removed, even if she no longer has a master. In a sense, a slave whose link with their master has been broken is free for anyone to claim, so if some weirdo forces her to make a contract, she might even fare worse, and she could even be killed if she disobeys. The girl tells him that he seems like a nice guy, and definitely a million times better than that man. Eftel can't deny that she's right about that, but he decides to ask her how she ended up a slave, since she's a demon. She explains that her clan has been enslaved by humans ever since they lost war with the human nations a long time ago. Eftel knows that once they become a slave, it takes a lot of paperwork to really free them, which is cruel, but it's just how the world works. The demon girl clarifies that even if she doesn't look like it, she's a descendant of demon royalty, and a distant relative of the headmistress of the famous magic academy, Altina, headmistress Merlin. Eftel is shocked to hear that name, so he immediately asks her if she's talking about the student of Eftel, one of the 4 emperors. The girl confirms it and tells him that she was raised by Eftel, one of the 4 emperors, and the legendary sage, and she's now the strongest demon mage. Eftel couldn't be happier to hear that Merlin's made it big after 400 years, and is headmistress at a magic academy. He realizes demons really do live a long time, so he'll be able to see her even after 400 years. Knowing that makes him take a decision just then, so he tells the girl that he'll be his master for a while. After all, he can't leave one of Merlin's relatives to suffer out here on her own. The girl happily thanks him and introduces herself as Anastasia, and they both make it to town just before sunset. Eftel informs her that they're here for the Magic Academy's entrance examination that will be held here tomorrow. Anastasia is surprised to know that he's planning to attend as a student, since he's already so strong. Eftel decides to start by finding an inn where they can stay at, but when he hears Anastasia's stomach growling, he changes plans and decides to find somewhere to eat first. He finds a fancy-looking restaurant after a while, so Anastasia gets a little nervous and asks him if this place isn't too expensive. Despite this, Eftel just asks her not to worry about the prices and explains that the day before an important day, they need to eat lots of good meat. He walks into the restaurant and asks for a table for 2, and even though the host is a little weirded out by her presence, he remains professional and guides them to a table. Anastasia looks around with curiosity, confirming that this place indeed looks expensive. She also notices the looks people around are giving her for being a slave, though, realizing they're all disgusted by her presence here. They also don't understand what a little boy is doing in a luxury restaurant like this, but Eftel completely ignores them and asks Anastasia not to worry about a thing. That's when he notices that she's decided to sit on the floor for some reason, so he asks her what she's doing down there. Anastasia doesn't understand his question, though, so he explains that she should sit at the table with him. The offer surprises her more than he expected, and Anastasia looks at him with hope in her eyes, wondering if it's okay for a slave like her to sit at the table. Eftel doesn't know what she's talking about because he thinks it should be obviously okay for her to do so. Anastasia explains that slaves are supposed to kneel next to their master so they can immediately respond to their needs. Eftel clarifies that he doesn't care what she's supposed to do, but he soon understands that she's just that accustomed to being a slave. That's why he decides to tell her that his order as her master is for her to sit at the table with him. Having no other choice, Anastasia sits with him at the table and realizes how comfy the chair is, which makes her smile. However, a waiter soon approaches them and informs Eftel that their restaurant strictly forbids allowing slaves to use the chairs. He also tells him that they're a luxury restaurant that strictly serves the upper classes, so he wants to know if he has the money to pay for his meal. The waiter approaches him in a menacing way, saying that it seems one of their staff made a mistake in seating him, but this isn't a place for the lower classes to eat. Anastasia gets nervous and tells Eftel that they should go eat at one of the stalls outside after all. However, Eftel reassures her and then places 3 dragon drops on the table, asking the waiter if that's enough. Only 3 dragon drops are enough to leave the waiter completely speechless. So to top it all off, Eftal opens his jacket and lets him see that he has plenty more of them. The waiter nervously takes one of the dragon drops to inspect it closely, saying that a single one of these at this size is worth more than 500 gold. The man immediately apologizes to Eftal, who asks him to keep the change and to just give him all the good meat they have. The staff's behavior changes instantly, so they quickly take them to the VIP room and prepare a feast only for them. Eftal then explains that he was actually given a lot of money for this trip, which used to be his father's money, of course. Once they bring all the food, Anastasia is a little reluctant to eat anything, simply because she's never been treated like this before, and she doesn't know if it's okay for a slave like her to eat this. Eftal reminds her that they're going to be spending some time together, so she can consider it his way of saying that he's happy to have her around. Anastasia doesn't fully understand what he means by that, but Eftal doesn't explain himself and asks her to eat up, saying that the food will get cold. He mentions that he's sure she's suffered through a lot of unfair things while she's been a slave, and it's possible that he might mistreat her too, without realizing it. Eftal clarifies that if that ever happens, then it's okay for her to get mad at him. To his surprise, Anastasia doesn't even understand the concept of getting mad, which makes him realize she's been a slave for so long that she's forgotten what it means to get angry. With this in mind, Eftal tries his best to explain it and lets her know that when something upsets her, it's okay to say so. That simple statement surprises her more than anything, but Anastasia finally accepts, understanding what he means. Without wasting any time, Eftal tells her that they should practice getting rid of her slave habits and asks her to try getting mad at him. That takes her off guard, of course, and she doesn't know exactly how to react, but she tries her best anyway, even though she's not really angry. The next day, they both head to Crone Magic Academy to register for the entrance exam. Before they do anything, Anastasia decides to thank Eftal for her new clothes, since they're much prettier and much more comfortable than what she was wearing before. Eftal just smiles and tells her that they suit her much better, so he's glad that she likes it. She notices how many people there is, so he explains that magic academies are really hard to get into. After all, if they graduate from a magic academy, they'll never have trouble finding a job. That's why a lot of people come to take the exam, and he thinks she should take the exam too. Anastasia is surprised that she can take the exam as well, so Eftal lets her know that anyone is allowed to take it, and if it goes well, she might be able to get a job down the line. With that decided, Eftal decides to register them both, but Anastasia wonders if she can really do it. Eftal knows that she'll be fine though, because she has a lot more magical talent than most humans, all because she's a relative of Merlin's, even if just a distant one. Once all applicants are gathered, a man informs them that they will begin the first stage of the exam, a battle royale. The man introduces himself as their exam proctor, Franz Bauer, and explains that in the first round of the examinations, they will fight until only 5 are left standing. They can use magic, weapons, or any methods that they like to knock their rivals out of the field. Without any further explanation, the examination begins, so 50 examinees step into the ring, including Eftal and Anastasia. Franz observes everything from above, knowing that for a B-rank adventurer like him, there is no job like being an exam proctor. He gets paid just for watching a bunch of kids after all, but even though he does this every year, he never sees anybody impressive at all. Franz notices that Eftal and Anastasia are surrounded already, which doesn't surprise him, since the standard move in a battle royale is to knock the weakest ones out first. He already figured that would be the case here, but all his expectations are thrown out the window when one of the examinees is launched into the sky all of the sudden. Before he can even figure out what's going on, 9 other examinees are launched out of the field, getting immediately disqualified. Soon, Franz realizes that Eftal strengthened his legs and kicked them out himself, which means he can use some degree of physical ability enhancement. He knows this won't be that easy though, because another thing with battle royales is that everyone teams up to beat the strong ones. Just like that, several examinees jump at them all at once, but Anastasia reacts quickly and recites an incantation to cast a level 3 spell called Sylphie's Kiss. This spell alone knocks out 16 examinees, so 16 more enter the field. But people in the crowd start wondering who Anastasia is, because she used a spell an exam student shouldn't be able to cast. Anastasia gets really nervous when she hears all the people whispering things about her, so she asks Eftal if she went too far. Eftal reassures her and confirms that she has talent, just as he thought, but he mentions that she apparently can't cast spells without an incantation. Everyone is confused after hearing that comment, and Franz can't hold his laugh, saying that this kid doesn't even know the basics of magic. Anastasia nervously informs Eftal that he of course needs an incantation to cast a spell, and it's something everyone knows. However, Eftal assures her that's not true, because if they bother with incantations, they can't do a lot of things. To show her, he decides to cast a level 4 spell called Sylphie's Leap, but Franz is shocked to see that he's casting 4 simultaneous level 4 spells, doing parallel activations. This spell not only sends flying all the examinees in the field, but it also destroys a great part of the building. Anastasia is shocked that he was able to do that with no incantation, but the other people in the crowd are more surprised that he could cast a level 4 spell at all. Having no other choice, Franz tells Eftal and Anastasia that they passed the first test, even though he finds it hard to believe himself. The next step for them is the written exams, and Eftal mastered the study of magic in his past life, so the questions are easy, but he admits that there sure are a lot of them. Once the time is up, Eftal is just glad that it's over, since there sure were were a lot of problems, but he managed to finish them all. Anastasia is surprised to hear that he solved them all, though Eftal doesn't understand her confusion since they clearly need to answer them all to pass the exam. However, she clarifies that they're supposed to only answer the questions relating to their best field. That information surprises Eftal, but the Academy's staff is even more surprised when they find out about his score of 958 because they've never heard of a score like that. That's never happened in the history of the Academy, so some of them start wondering who he is, even considering that he cheated or something. The examiner informs the staff that this student is the examinee number 588 and that his name is Eftal Orkot, who, strangely enough, has the same name as the famous Lightning Emperor. The old man from the staff mentions that this kid has really bold parents for giving him that name, because for those who follow the path of magic, that's almost blasphemy. He really starts considering the possibility that he cheated, but that's when France barges in the room to tell them what happened during the first exam. Everyone is shocked to know that Eftal did parallel activations on a level 4 spell, because most people can't use a level 4 spell until graduate school. Besides, they're also sure not a single member of their faculty can do parallel activations. France explains that given his skill, his score on the second exam was probably earned fairly. Unable to deny that, the old man now begins to consider that Eftal could even be the second coming of the Lightning Emperor. Sometime later, a lot of examinees gather outside to see the exam results, and since there's a lot of people, Eftal and Anastasia decide to split to find their names. Anastasia finds her number first and excitedly hugs him, saying that she made it into the special class and that it's all thanks to him. When she notices that some people are looking at them, she immediately pulls away from him and apologizes, feeling really embarrassed. Eftal reassures her and congratulates her on passing because now she'll be able to live the life of an ordinary student. Anastasia happily thanks him, and Eftal decides to find his own number to see his results. However, he soon finds out that his number is not even on the list for some reason. Anastasia is clearly confused by this because there is no way that he can possibly fail the test. Eftal agrees, knowing that it doesn't make sense at all, especially when he's sure that the test went well. He wonders if they ran a magical aptitude test at some point, and that's why he failed, because it wouldn't make sense otherwise. Anastasia can't accept this result, so she tells him that she's going to complain right away. Before she leaves, Eftal panics and asks her not to do it, saying that she'll just make him more embarrassed. Anastasia suddenly stops, but only because she sees a text plaque that says that Eftal qualifies as a special elite student. That alone is pretty impressive, because it means they singled him out specifically. Eftal is glad he passed, but he doesn't know what it means to be a special elite student representative, so he has no idea what they're going to make him do. Anastasia later informs him that the special elite student representative title is something really amazing, apparently. After all, he gets free tuition, free board, free food, and a special cash stipend on top of that. Eftal takes a look at the information she brought and finds out he'll also be present at PR activities on behalf of the school, and he'll have participation in events with other schools as well. He admits that it's amazing, but it doesn't convince him as much because it feels more like being a school mascot than a student, and that's not what he's after at all. He wanted to use the school library and other facilities without attracting attention and try to find some breakthrough regarding magical aptitude. That was his ideal school life, but now that he's been chosen as a student representative, he doesn't think he gets the option to say no. Eftal walks through the halls of the academy with Anastasia as he thinks about this, but he immediately hides behind a pillar when his gaze zeroes in on Merlin for the first time since he got there. Anastasia is a little confused by his sudden reaction, but Eftal takes a second look and confirms that this woman is Merlin without a doubt. She's grown up after 400 years, but he can tell that it's her for sure, though he doesn't know what she's doing here. He's young right now, but he still looks like he did then, and Merlin knows him from his old life well enough she'd recognize him immediately. With that in mind, he knows that he can't meet her here, because if people find out he's Eftal reincarnated, things will get bad fast. That's why he quickly makes up an excuse and tells Anastasia that he wants to check out more of the school. Even as he tries to escape without being seen, Merlin instantly senses the presence of her master, but when she turns around, Eftal is already gone, nowhere to be seen. She tries to convince herself that it was only her imagination, because there's no way he could be here. However, when she sees Eftal walking away with Anastasia, she immediately chases after him, wanting to know who he is. Merlin manages to catch up in no time to confront him, leaving him with no way to escape. Without beating around the bush, she directly asks him if he's related to the Lightning Emperor. With that, Eftal confirms that Merlin did sense something, but now that he's a student at this school, he doesn't want this to get out of hand and have them refuse to admit him. That's why he decides to play dumb and simply tells her that he doesn't understand what she's getting at. He then tells Anastasia that he's hungry and immediately runs away without letting her respond. During lunch, Eftal is surprised to find out Anastasia didn't recognize her at all, and she even asks him if Merlin is really her distant relative. After all, she's never met her before since Merlin is the daughter of the Demon King. Anastasia explains that her relatives told her that the head of their clan 10 generations ago was the Demon King, which means they're barely related at all. Eftal is really surprised by this, but he understands that if they're that distantly related, then of course she wouldn't know. That explains why Anastasia don't look much like Merlin as well. However, he still doesn't understand why Merlin is here, since she's supposed to be running the Altina Magic Academy, and this This is the Crone Magic Academy. Sometime later, at the school entrance ceremony, the headmaster welcomes all new students to the venerated Crone Magic Academy and tells them that starting today, they will be a part of this house of learning. He mentions to those of them in the special class and those of them who are even more special that he hopes that they'll interact with others in different classes and follow the path of magic together. The headmaster then announces that today they've brought someone of a different species entirely, headmistress of Altina Magic Academy Merlin, as a guest as well. Now Eftal understands why she's here, at least, and Merlin then thanks the headmaster for the introduction. She tells the students that, as a fellow traveler on the path of magic, she wants to congratulate them on successfully entering this school because they've overcome any number of trials in their effort to improve themselves. Eftal listens to her speech, and he's glad that he at least doesn't have to worry about her being a teacher here, but he knows that he needs to do something soon, maybe after the ceremony, before things get out of hand. To his bad luck, the headmaster then announces that their student representative will give a speech and introduces him as the special elite student, Eftal Orcott. Merlin is surprised to hear that name, and Eftal knows that this is really bad, but he had no choice but to walk on stage to give a speech he didn't plan beforehand. Now that she knows his name, he's sure that she's going to find out, because everyone knows the name of the Lightning Emperor. All the other students also start wondering about him, recognizing him as the one who got the highest score ever on the written test and the one who blew a bunch of people out of the ring during the first exam. Eftal just hopes that Merlin doesn't hear those comments, but her angry expression is all but good news. After the ceremony, many girls surround him with interest, saying that it's really cool that he's a special elite student. All of them flood him with questions, wanting to know where he was born or if he has a girlfriend, but Eftal doesn't even look at them and tries to figure out what to do. Anastasia just keeps her distance, not liking the attention he's receiving at all since she found him first. To make things worse, Merlin suddenly walks in the room and harshly slams some papers on the table, clearly not happy. All the students who are surrounding him quickly take their leave, very intimidated by her stance, while the other students around simply observe the scene, wondering what's going on. Merlin tells him that she learned a lot about him, so she knows that his name is Eftal. Eftal nervously confirms it, realizing that Merlin is a lot more sharp-tongued than she used to be. She sits on the chair opposite him, still with an angry expression, and asks him if he's familiar with the concept of reincarnation. That direct approach takes Eftal by surprise, though he knows that she's always been clever like that, so it was to expect that she would figure him out. Despite this, he still tries to play dumb and asks her what she's talking about. Merlin explains that she saw his exam results, and he had a score like he was one of the 4 emperors who decided to join the school for fun. Most of the staff here could tell that his answers were right, but couldn't understand the process he used to solve them. That's because his answers are based on magical theories that are 400 years old. Merlin asks him how he can explain something like this, but even Eftal seems unsure because he had no idea at all. After all, the problems were so simple that he didn't think about the time gap at all. Merlin then admits with fondness that he's just like someone important to her, taking him by surprise. She quickly apologizes though and explains that whenever her master is involved, she gets a little emotional. Merlin tells him that even if reincarnation is going too far, he still has a special relationship to Eftal, one of the legendary 4 emperors, and she assumes that he ran away from her because that relationship meant he didn't want to talk to her, or at least that's what she thinks. Eftal really wishes he could just tell her that he actually reincarnated, because if he could say that, it would make things so easy. However, all the students around are starting to get suspicious about him, wondering if he's a demon of some kind. Eftal just wants to study magic, so he decides to lie and tells Merlin that the Lightning Emperor had a lover. If she can't accept it, he can just give her the story she wants after all. Merlin is clearly shocked by this at first, but Eftal continues with the story and tells her that the Lightning Emperor was secretly in love with a woman. The child she bore him was kept a secret from the world, but his magical aptitude was incredible, so the Lightning Emperor taught him everything he knew. The boy was kept in a secret village far away from prying eyes and spent his life in that isolated place practicing his magic alone. Merlin suddenly grabs him by the collar of his shirt, harshly telling him that something like that is impossible because she was never told about it. Eftal then tells her about the fact that he died in despair after learning he had no magical aptitude, but Merlin immediately silences him and warns him that's been kept a secret from the public. After all, that information would damage the image of the 4 emperors, and he shouldn't say that with other people around. Some of the students around are curious about their conversation already, while Eftal tries to fight for his life, unable to breathe with Merlin's hold on him. She finally lets go of him, admitting that if he knows that, then what he's saying is actually true. Eftal confirms it and tells her that he's Eftal Orcott the 13th, though he mentions that the public doesn't know about them, it seems. He knows that everything he just said is a lie, so he internally apologizes to Merlin, hoping that she accepts this. Merlin thinks about it for a bit and then finally believes him, but she admits that she feels a touch sad that she was never told something so important. Eftal is glad that she accepted it, but to his surprise, Merlin tells him that she wants to see which of them is the real thing. She explains that his clan are not the only ones following the path the legendary Lightning Emperor laid out and striving to be the strongest, and that he's not the only one to keep practicing his magic. Eftal just then realizes that Merlin has been practicing magic for 400 years, ever since that day, which means she's a lot stronger now. Merlin asks him if he'll be taking part in this afternoon's mock battles as the special representative, and when Eftal confirms it, she decides to ask him to compare his magic to hers during those mock battles. Eftal is shocked by the proposal at first, and he knows that if he does something like that, he will definitely stand out, and he'll be finished for sure. He knows that he could always refuse, of course, but to everyone's surprise, Eftal decides to accept her challenge without a doubt. After all, Merlin's determined expression makes him realize that his strongest feeling right now is that he wants to see what she has been doing these 400 years. Soon enough, everyone at the academy hears about the mock magical battle, knowing that the new student, Eftal, is going to fight Merlin. All students are eager to see it, because even if Eftal is the special representative, they think he can't possibly beat Merlin, though they can't help but wonder what magic they'll use. Eftal knows that this is an event created so that students can fight teachers, to make the difference in power between them clear. It's the entrance ceremony special mock magical battle, and he accepted Merlin's offer because he wanted badly to see what his student has been doing for the past 400 years. The next day, when it's finally time for the event, the whole academy shows up just to see the battle between the demon hero and head of Altena Academy, Merlin, and the special representative, Eftal. The host announces that Merlin will be showing them the strongest magic herself, so this will be a place of great learning for them. As followers on the path of magic, everyone cheers for Merlin, eager to see what her magic can do up close, and many girls cheer for Eftal as well, wanting to see what he's capable of in person. Anastasia, on the other hand, can't even stand how loud they all are, but she can do nothing but cover her ears, because she wants to see the battle as well. Now that Eftal is standing face to face with Merlin, he can see that she's all grown up, so he wants her to show him the path she's followed. Before the mock magical battle begins, Eftal suggests that they start with a little test of their skills, and Merlin easily agrees, wanting him to show her what he's got. Without hesitation, Eftal casts a level 6 flare burst with no incantation, taking her by surprise. The whole audience is shocked to see this, and even Merlin wasn't expecting him to start with that, especially when he said this was just a little test. However, she still manages to block his attack, and admits that she underestimated him a little. Eftal can't hide his excitement when he realizes that she blocked the attack instantly with a level 7 perfect wall, which was just to expect from his favorite student. Merlin starts thinking that maybe she has to believe his story after all, because there's no way he can use a level 6 spell at that age, and with that skill. Despite this, she clarifies that she has her pride, because even though he may be the 13th of his clan, she is the favorite student of the original Eftal. To prove this, she decides to cast the same spell as him, attacking him with a level 6 flare burst. Eftal then casts the same spell she used to block the attack in a second, lifting a level 7 perfect wall with ease. Merlin is still very confident about her spell, because she has her pride as the original person to learn magic from the Lightning Emperor himself. Eftal realizes that he hasn't seen a level 6 spell of this skill since being reincarnated, so he's actually enjoying this. Merlin, on the other hand, doesn't understand why he's grinning while he fights her, so she decides to step it up and gets ready to cast her next spell, another level 6 flare burst. This spell alone terrifies the students in the audience, and Merlin explains that it normally takes time to reconstruct a powerful spell, but if they truly learn the ways of her master, the Lightning Emperor, they can use high-level magic multiple times with no incantation. To her surprise, Eftal clarifies that he already knows that, and informs her that he's got his spell ready as well. Just then, he casts a level 7 Evil Frost, completely freezing the flames Merlin cast, and making her realize he prepared an ice spell, knowing she would use a fire one. Eftal doesn't waste any time and immediately follows that spell with a level 7 Icing Titan, knowing that the no incantation and chain casting abilities she's using are things he created so he could be a match for the other emperors. Merlin is surprised that he formed that spell so quickly after the Evil Frost, and it's clear that he just wants to see how long she can keep up with his speed. Having no other choice, she casts another level 7 perfect wall, so Eftal praises her quick reaction and tells her that it's time to go even faster. He suddenly takes her by surprise by chain casting level 7 spells, giving her no time to recover. Merlin quickly casts several perfect walls to block each Icing Titan's Eftal cast, but he instantly follows with a giant Icing Titan coming from above. Merlin realizes that this spell's magic is more refined than the others, which means he's most likely testing her right now. Not wanting him to underestimate her, she casts another perfect wall to withstand the attack, trying to hold her ground in the face of such an impact. In terms of refinement, she knows that her level 7 is just as powerful, but even so, her perfect wall starts breaking, and she realizes she's being pushed back. Eftal then informs her that her casting was imperfect, and reminds her that even if the magical purity is the same, she can't block his Icing Titan like that. Merlin stubbornly asks him to shut up, but she also notices just then the way he's pointing out her flaws even in the middle of battle. She realizes he's not pointing them out, and it's more like he's trying to correct her mistakes, in the same way her master used to do it. This surprises her more than anything, but it also motivates her to try harder, so she decides to multicast a level 7 perfect wall, which completely breaks the Icing Titan. Eftal is amazed to see that she was able to multicast a level 7 spell, though multicasting means means focusing her mind on building up mana. With this in mind, he asks her if his ancestor didn't tell her that's why she can't take her eyes off her enemy when she does it. In less than a second, Eftal is right above her with a spell prepared, but to his surprise, Merlin informs him that her ancestor did tell her that, and she then casts a level 8 spell, Teleport. She easily disappears from his sight and attacks him from behind with a powerful flare burst, not giving him time to react. The whole audience goes silent, completely stunned after witnessing this, but Merlin's confident expression soon changes to slight disappointment when she realizes she couldn't beat him even with this spell. After all, Eftal assumed he'd be attacked from the behind and prepared a teleport spell as well. Merlin just laughs at this, admitting that he uses the same techniques as her teacher, which she's been practicing for 400 years. Losing to someone with those techniques and the same name should be frustrating, but since he looks so much like him, it makes her so nostalgic, she can't help but smile. Eftal smiles the same way, and Merlin tells him that she'll use her most powerful secret spell to end this, so if he can withstand this, she'll admit defeat. Eftal easily understands that she's not giving up yet, so he doesn't plan to stop her. Since there are no objections, Merlin doesn't waste any time and casts a level 8 spell, Thor's Hammer. Eftal is surprised that her secret spell is just Thor's Hammer, since it's just a normal spell, even if her magic is refined. He easily dodges the first attack, wondering what's different about this spell for her to call it a secret one. Eftal soon realizes that Merlin is using multicast with her left hand as well, so he assumes that's her secret spell, though he actually saw it coming. However, before he can defend himself, Merlin also multicasts the spell with her leg, taking him by surprise. The only thing Eftal can do is dodge, because he can't believe she had a trick like that up her sleeve. Merlin then uses her other leg as well, quad casting a level 8 spell with ease. Eftal is excited to see that this is her secret technique, and he can't help but laugh with joy, because this is what he was expecting from his favorite student. Merlin starts levitating as she charges the electric spells, and Eftal thinks she's truly amazing, considering he never saw something like this even when he was alive before. He remembers all the moments he lived by her side in his other life, understanding the reason she's his favorite student. Now that he can see her like this, he knows that she's been working hard these past 400 years since he died, which means he'll have to answer her 400 years with all his might as the Lightning Emperor with his level 10 original spell, Eftal. Merlin is casting one level 8 spell for each of her limbs in the air, and he considers that's not bad at all, because a normal person can barely do 2 spells at once. He waits for the right moment to attack, and when Merlin is finally ready, she asks him to show her he can withstand this, and casts 4 level 8 Thor's Hammers at once. Eftal admits that it is a wonderful thing to see his student grow, but he doesn't plan to hold back, so he casts his level 10 Eftal, summoning a powerful lightning bolt from the clouds. This spell alone is so huge it blinds the whole audience because of how bright it is, and Merlin can barely see what's happening. It's an impossibly powerful blast of lightning, strong enough to absorb Merlin's Thor's Hammer. She can't even believe what's happening, because it should be impossible for anyone to do something like this. However, when she sees Eftal smiling like that, she realizes the only one who could do this is the Lightning Emperor himself. She saw it with her own eyes 400 years ago, after all, when he saved her from that monster in the forest and then reprimanded her. It was the first time she saw him casting that level 10 Eftal, and the sight was as blinding as it is now, so she never forgot that moment. Knowing that she can't withstand such a spell, Merlin simply closes her eyes, accepting her defeat. Just then, Eftal uses Magic Cancel to nullify his own spell and Merlin's, making it disappear completely. All the students and even the Academy's staff are shocked into complete silence, trying to process what just happened. Merlin's body slowly descends to the ground as she realizes Eftal canceled the spell and returned the lightning to the atmosphere. Her surprise soon turns into relief, and she can't help but let out a soft laugh, saying that there is not a chance Eftal is just a secret child. After all, his incredible skill and his ability to predict what his enemy will do are just like her master's. Besides, there is only one person in the whole world who could use that level 10 spell, Eftal. Once he approaches her, Merlin has no more doubts, so she directly tells him that he is her teacher reborn. She's clearly waiting for a confirmation, so Eftal just smiles, knowing that he can't hide it any longer, and admits that he should have guessed she'd realize. Merlin's expression fills with hope, and Eftal tells her that she knows better than anyone that there is no other explanation for this. He then decides to pat her head like he used to do, and tells her that that last secret spell of hers really shocked him, so he can tell that she has been working hard these last 400 years, and he is truly impressed. The gesture takes her by surprise, but Merlin actually enjoys it, because she knows that it is actually him. She is happy to know that he is alive again, and that she can see him again, and hear those words from him after 400 years. Merlin smiles through her tears, and confesses that those words alone made the past 400 years worth it. Eftal can see that she's really happy right now, so he can't help but smile as well, but he asks her not to cry, saying that she's not a little kid anymore. Merlin quickly wipes her tears and beams with joy, apologizing and explaining that she will always be a child when he's around. No one but them can hear this conversation, so they enjoy this moment alone after battle and simply laugh together. That is until Anastasia runs into the arena to see Eftal, clearly worried about him after everything that just happened. The moment she calls him her master, Merlin's happy expression expression instantly turns into a glare as she asks him if he really has a slave when he is still just a student. Eftal quickly explains himself and informs her that Anastasia ran into some trouble, so he is just looking after her for now. Anastasia nervously introduces herself, not knowing what else to say, but Merlin doesn't say anything at first and simply observes her carefully. After giving it some thought, Merlin decides to relax and tells her that she is sure she has her reasons, so she will let it pass for now. Anastasia finally lowers her guard and then remembers the reason she came here in the first place, so she tells Eftal that things got really crazy during that magical mock battle, but they got even crazier after it. Right after she gives him that warning, Eftal turns around and sees all the students from the academy, and even the staff, running towards him with excitement, saying that what he did is incredible. Even members of the teaching staff from other schools ask him to become a teacher at their institutes, wanting him to teach their students all he knows. Some others also ask him to present the spell he used at the next Magic Academic Conference, since they have never seen something like that. Eftal panics a little when he sees everyone approaching him so fast, and he soon realizes he is completely surrounded. It doesn't surprise him though, and he admits that he should have expected that reaction from them after doing something like that. They were easily surprised by a level 6 and a level 7 spell after all, so it is no wonder they went crazy for a level 10. Given what he knows and what he can do, Merlin decides to ask him why he came to this school, since she doesn't think there is anything they can teach him. Eftal explains that he just wanted to study magic as a student here, and there is not much to add to that. Merlin doesn't question that simple answer, easily understanding it, and considering that is all there is to it, she tells him that they should get out of here right now in that case, before the others reach him. Eftal is a little surprised by that sudden offer, since he has no idea where they would go right now. The crowd is rapidly getting closer to them, so Merlin just takes his hands and assures him that she has a plan, so he just has to trust her. After taking his hand, she simply starts running and drags him away with her, helping him escape the crowd and the crazy staff who wants to recruit him for other schools. Anastasia doesn't understand a thing, but Merlin doesn't give them any explanations, so she has no other choice but to run after them, not wanting to leave Eftal alone. Soon enough, everyone is chasing after them, wanting to reach Eftal as soon as they can. Merlin continues running with him until they lose each one of them, and when no one is in sight, they walk more calmly along a road beside the forest. Eftal observes their surroundings and admits that they have come a long way, but Merlin assures him they are almost there. As they walk, he takes a closer look at the forest around and realizes that this place is actually kind of familiar. He doesn't say anything about it though, until Merlin finally informs them that they have arrived. That is the moment Eftal sees his old mansion, a place he still remembers very well, and it brings him memories from his past life. It looks almost just like it used to look, so he can't help but smile with fondness when he realizes Merlin has been looking after this place for 400 years. As he contemplates his old home with appreciation, Merlin tells him that he can wait here until she finishes the paperwork. Eftal is not so sure what she is talking about, so Merlin informs him that she will file paperwork saying that he and Anastasia are her adopted children and apprentices. This information surprises them both, and Merlin happily tells them that she will make sure the paperwork gets done as soon as possible. Eftal is still clearly surprised, not knowing what to say, so she quickly explains that now he will be able to use the Academy's facilities anytime he likes. This is exactly what he wanted, but Merlin actually looks more excited than him, because she never dreamed she would get to go to school with Eftal, and she can't wait for school to start. She doesn't hide her happiness and tells him that they will need to get him a new uniform now and make all the arrangements for it. Merlin is clearly getting ahead of herself, so Eftal quickly stops her and asks her what she's saying. After calming down, Merlin informs him that she will use her authority as head of Altena Magic Academy to allow them to enroll there immediately. Both Eftal and Anastasia are surprised by this, realizing that they'll go to Altena Magic Academy now. Merlin confidently tells them that she thinks it is a great idea, because that way she can go to school with Eftal, eat lunch with him, study at the library with him, and many more things. Eftal gives it some thought, knowing that if he goes to Altena, then he'd be able to pursue magic all he wants as a student without worrying, especially with Merlin as the head of the school, since she knows his secret. With this in mind, he decides to accept the offer and thanks her, giving her a warm hug that takes her by surprise, and Merlin just asks him to leave it all to her. Later on, while Merlin takes care of the paperwork, Eftal decides to look for something in his old mansion, exploring a secret dungeon with Anastasia to find a treasury. After all, since he can use a sword now, he realized there was one that he wanted. Anastasia asks him if it's okay for someone like her to go with him, and Eftal simply reassures her, saying that it's totally fine. He mentions that Merlin will be busy handling their enrollment papers until afternoon, and she said they could go anywhere they like. As they advance down the hall, a genie suddenly appears to block the path, saying that no one will pass beyond this point. He assumes they're just little thieves and asks them to get lost before they get hurt. Despite how intimidating he may seem, Eftal calmly tells him that they're not thieves and asks him to move, explaining that he's just come to get his katana, Raikiri. His confidence infuriates the genie, who asks him how he dares to say that the Raikiri is his. The genie explains that the katana he's talking about is a legendary weapon, brought back from the Demon King's castle by Eftal, one of the 4 emperors, and its value is SSS rank, so no one can even see it. Even Eftal is already aware of that, of course, since the Demon King used Raikiri Raikiri to cut his level 10 Eftal spell in two, and that really was a close one. The genie then thinks that they're probably Merlin's students or something, so he tells them that he'll be nice and assume they just wanted to take a look at the treasury. He once again asks them to get lost, explaining that Merlin said no one but Eftal can enter. Eftal tries to explain that he has the right to be here, but the genie loses his patience and yells at him, spitting as he speaks. He exclaims that he tried to take it easy on him because he figured that the old hag likes him, but he's about ready to snap and kill him. Eftal remains completely stoic, while the genie continues shouting, saying that he's pissed off enough about that old hag bossing him around. He also mockingly says that the old hag's teacher, Eftal, was an incompetent with no magical aptitude at all, which makes him believe Merlin might not be that special herself. He even bets Eftal only became one of the 4 emperors through some dirty trick, not because he was any good. Despite how blatantly disrespectful he's being, Eftal surprisingly keeps his composure and simply asks him where Raikiri is. His severe expression even intimidates the genie, who realizes he really wants to know where it is that badly. He finds him interesting enough to accept revealing Raikiri's location, but he also mentions that this treasury has protection magic on it, so an average thief or mage couldn't even touch it. Completely ignoring his explanation, Eftal walks past the genie and heads directly towards the katana. The genie nervously clarifies that he can take a closer look, but he shouldn't try to touch it because he'd need to be at the level of Merlin, the old hag. Much to his shock, Eftal simply grabs the katana and casts a level 8 spell called Perfect Dispel. The genie kind of freaks out with that because it should be impossible, and he dispelled the magic like it was nothing. Eftal calmly checks out the katana and says that it's good enough, and just then, Merlin walks in with an intimidating aura around her. She's clearly pissed at the genie, who screams in horror as soon as he sees her. Merlin doesn't hold back and yells at him, exclaiming that she could hear him even outside the mansion, so she heard every word he said. Her expression abruptly changes to a bright smile as soon as Eftal greets her, while the genie remains frozen in shock. Eftal tells her that he remembered Raikiri was here, and after remembering the fact that he can use a sword now, Merlin asks him to teach her how to use one sometime. The genie is still short-circuiting as he tries to process the situation, especially after hearing that his name is Eftal. He cast a level 8 Perfect Dispel instantly, with no incantation, and he keeps talking like he's the real deal. All his suspicions are confirmed the moment Eftal looks at him with a stern expression, so the genie can do nothing but scream in horror, finally realizing that he is actually the real deal. Anastasia remains silent during all of this, completely clueless as the genie gets on his knees to apologize to Eftal for being so rude. He repeatedly slams his head against the floor to apologize, but Eftal easily forgives him and says that it's fine. The fact that it was that easy kind of surprises the genie, and Eftal then informs him that he and Anastasia will live here now, so he better remember their faces. The genie immediately agrees, and Merlin then warns him that if he calls her an old hag again, she'll blast him out of existence without a second thought. That threat completely terrifies him, so Eftal laughs and tells her that doing that is going too far. Merlin doesn't think it is, so the genie asks him to save him, but Eftal clarifies that he can't do anything for him because Merlin is scary when she gets mad. Later that day, they decide to take a walk in town, and Eftal mentions that some of these shops actually haven't changed for 400 years. Merlin agrees and points to the tailor shop, which Eftal recognizes since they did the curtains for her room. She then tells him that she's getting him and Anastasia's uniforms made there, so they go in to have their measurements taken. Once that's done, they decide to enjoy their time together, going to the library and having some tea and sweets at a tea house. Merlin then asks him what he'll do now, but since Eftal seems unsure, the employee at the tea house mentions that they could join in a treasure hunt. She explains that there is a treasure hunting game going on across the whole town, and the person who finds the most treasures around town wins, and they can keep what they find. The woman informs them that the prize for the winner is a hot springs trip, and Merlin really likes the sound of that. She asks Eftal what he thinks about it, wanting to know if he'll join the treasure hunt since she thinks it'll be fun. Eftal gives it some thought as they walk, but he then notices that Anastasia is apparently interested in the treasure hunt. She's staring at one of the flyers, so Eftal asks her if she wants to go to a hot spring. Anastasia is too nervous to give him a clear answer, but Eftal takes the decision either way and says that they'll join the treasure hunt since they've got time. Merlin is really excited about it because she really wants to go to the hot springs and she thinks they need a break once in a while. Anastasia is also happy, but she confesses that she's less interested in the hot springs and it's the treasure itself what she wants. Merlin is a little confused by this, but Anastasia is too nervous to elaborate, so Eftal reassures her and clarifies that she doesn't have to answer if she doesn't want to. After taking a look at the flyer, he mentions that they're using shape-shifting to make the treasures hard to find the normal way. Anastasia says that he could try Perfect Dispel to break the shape-shifting again, like in the treasury. However, Merlin tells her that using that would break other spells that have nothing to do with the treasure hunt. After all, even if she can't see them, there are many kinds of spells everywhere in this town. If they just used a Perfect Dispel, it'd send the town into a panic for sure, so that is not an option. Despite this, Eftal says that they can just dispel the magic used by the person who cast the shape-shifting spell. Merlin is surprised that he can do something so precise, and Eftal is completely confident, so he wastes no time and casts a level 5 spell called Magic Jammer. Thanks to this, they manage to find all the treasures around town, and by the end of the day, they win the treasure hunt. Merlin is excited about the tickets they got for the hot springs trip, but Anastasia is happy just with the treasures she decided to keep, so she thanks Eftel for it. She then nervously confesses that she just wanted the treasure because it reminds her of him when he smiles. Eftel wasn't expecting a reason like that, and Merlin is surprised that she wanted that treasure even more than the hot springs trip. The situation only makes Eftel laugh, though Anastasia clarifies that she's really embarrassed. Later that night, Merlin decides to have a word with Eftel alone, saying that there is something she'd like to share with him. It sounds pretty important, so Eftel listens attentively, and Merlin informs him that she just went to the Great Bath with Anastasia. With a serious expression, she kneels before him and explains that she had just one goal, to see if Anastasia had a body that made her worthy of attending to his needs at night. Eftel immediately spits his drink after hearing that, and asks her where this came from, because he and Anastasia aren't like that. Merlin firmly tells him that a first-rate man must have a first-rate mistress, so as his greatest student, she carefully checked from Anastasia's head down to her toes to see if she could satisfy him. Without a doubt, Eftel hits her on the head and scolds her, clarifying that their relationship is not like that. Merlin apologizes for that, but she then mentions that she also saw a special slave crest on Anastasia's skin, so she asks him if he's really allowing her to stay by his side knowing it's there. When Eftel confirms it, Merlin questions his decision and reminds him that it's like having a bomb with him. Her words are interrupted when Eftel suddenly hits the table with his fist to silence her, and he harshly tells her that it was his decision to make, so he doesn't want to hear another word. Merlin instantly backs off and apologizes, understanding that it was his decision, and he knows all about it already. Time after that, it is finally time for Eftel and Anastasia to enroll in Altena Magic Academy. However, as soon as they set foot there, everyone stares at Eftel with confusion and even disgust. All of the students are surprised to see a human, and they don't understand what a lesser race is doing at their school. Anastasia is a demon herself, but even she feels uncomfortable with everyone staring at them like that. So Eftel reminds her that this is a magic academy for demons only. That's why it follows that humans are a rare sight around here, and he's not surprised by their reactions. Despite this, he's still completely determined and knows that no matter what this place is, he can study magic here, and that's enough for him. If he can lead a peaceful school life, then nothing else matters. As soon as they step into the classroom, the demons there are surprised to know that the new student arriving today is a human. Just like the others, they don't understand why a human is here, since it simply doesn't make sense. Anastasia isn't a problem to them, but they definitely can't have a human with them, because they know that a lesser race can't really keep up. Everyone is murmuring things, but only a student named Abe Portes talks to Eftel directly, telling him that he does smell that human stink on him. Eftel simply ignores him and decides to sit down, but he soon realizes Anastasia is frozen in place, with a rather terrified expression, though she assures him that it's nothing. Another student named Maria approaches Eftel directly as well, and asks him how he was able to attend here. Abe doesn't even let him speak and tells her that he's probably some important human person, so he probably paid the school committee enough for them to bend the rules and let him in. Eftel doesn't say anything, because he is not totally wrong, which kind of makes this awkward. Abe asks him if he really thinks that after getting in like that, a lesser race like him can keep up. Not wanting to complicate things, Eftel simply smiles and tells him that he'll do his best. Despite his attempt to be friendly, Abe easily snaps at him and asks him if he has any idea how hard it was to pass the test to get here. After all, this is a school for the elite, superior races like demons and elves, and they're not supposed to study next to a lesser race that can barely use magic. Eftel calmly decides to ignore his words once again and takes a seat next to Anastasia, knowing that it's useless to argue. Maria then approaches him again to apologize, saying that she thinks Abe was rather extreme or vulgar. Even so, she clarifies that it is true that humans aren't liked here, and she doesn't discriminate against other races, but she does discriminate based on talent. Her pride won't let her be in the same class as a failure, and she's sure he can barely use any magic at all, so she advises him to try to stay out of their sight at all times. Maria leaves without another word, and Eftel recognizes that she's right, because demons have more potential for magic than humans, like Fraser was when he used his level 2 spell, and how Anastasia said she was bad at it but could still use a level 3 spell. That is one fact that hasn't changed in these past 400 years. Soon enough, Merlin walks into the classroom and asks everyone to take a seat, saying that they're starting homeroom. The whole class is surprised to see the headmistress of the academy herself in their classroom, making it clear that this is a rare occurrence. Merlin mentions that before she introduces their transfer students, she's announcing an instructor change as well. This takes both Eftel and Anastasia by surprise, because this isn't what they had discussed. Merlin doesn't let them question her and announces to the whole class that she, the Dean of Altena Magic Academy, Merlin Orcott, will be instructing them directly. She smiles with mischief, and Eftel already knows what she's doing, though he doesn't like it that much. The news causes commotion among all students, because they thought she was basically dean in name only and didn't actually do anything. They're all excited about the idea though, and they consider themselves lucky for this. While everyone wonders why she's teaching them now, Abe confidently stands up and assumes that Merlin heard rumors about his talent and decided she wanted to instruct him personally. No one even questions that a little, because they think it actually makes sense, considering who he is. is. However, to their surprise, Merlin simply asks him who he is, making it clear that she has no idea what he's talking about. Abe tries to hide how much that offends him and informs her that he's Abe Portes, the student with the best grades in the class. Merlin clarifies that she didn't come here for him, and then points directly at Eftal, saying that she's here for him because he joined their school today. Everyone is shocked to hear that, and Eftal doesn't think that was a smart thing to say, since all the attention is on him now, something he was trying to avoid. Abe is outraged by this, and he doesn't understand why the dean came to instruct a human personally. He can't possibly accept that, so he assumes that Eftal is the child of someone really important. That's how it seems to him, because it's the only reason a talentless human could possibly be here. After hearing this, Merlin simply tells him that only third-rate mages think in stereotypes like that. She then asks them all to listen and to look at Eftal carefully, letting them know that meeting him is the perfect chance to destroy any preconceptions they have about humans. Eftal can barely contain his frustration at this point because he doesn't know what Merlin is thinking, and he doesn't like this at all. Despite this, Merlin doesn't notice how upset he is and tops it all up by asking him to go easy on them all, addressing him with respect. Everyone in the class goes crazy after this, so Eftal shrinks in his seat and silently says goodbye to the peaceful school life he was hoping for. After class, Abe and other students confront him to ask who he is, but Eftal doesn't know how to answer that. Anastasia, on the other hand, secretly listens from outside the classroom, clearly worried about him. Abe simply says that Merlin is doing volunteer magic classes for human kids, and rumor has it she teaches the most handsome young male students personally, which means Eftal is that old hag's little plaything. The only thing Eftal tells him is that he shouldn't call the dean an old hag, but Abe threateningly asks him if he's telling him what to do. Having no choice, Eftal denies it to keep peace, thinking that this situation is a pain. Later, it is finally time for their class activities, and Merlin informs them that they'll be discussing who will participate in the interclass battle. She mentions that this class has filled every slot but its magic swordsman, so she wants to know if there are any volunteers. Eftal immediately hides when she looks at him, because whenever a fight's involved, the other him gets way too excited. Since no one is volunteering, Merlin tells them that this is going to have a big effect on their grades, so there's no need to hold back. She clarifies that they can volunteer, or someone can even volunteer for them if they name them. After hearing this, Abe decides to volunteer, and no one is surprised since he's the best swordsman in the school. Eftal is relieved for a second, but that's when Anastasia suddenly raises her hand and nervously says that she volunteers Eftal as a candidate. Having no choice, Eftal has to face Abe for the Altina Magic Academy interclass tournament selection. Merlin announces to the other students outside that they will hold a mock battle to compete for the position of magic swordsman, and the most powerful of the two will be selected. Before the mock battle begins, Merlin reminds them that magic is forbidden, so they have to show her their strength with a sword and nothing else. Eftal isn't excited about this whole thing at all, and he simply doesn't understand why this keeps happening. He glances at Anastasia, who can't even meet his eyes without showing guilt for some reason. Right before the mock battle begins, Eftal is still distracted, so Abe gives him a warning and asks him to get his sword ready, because he won't be happy beating someone who isn't even holding a sword. This gives everyone a good impression of him, since he's fighting fair and square, and they think that the human is scared. Eftal recognizes that Abe looks strong, which is perfect, because he can feint with a light kick and have Abe dodge it. Then they'll fight for a while, and he'll eventually lose on purpose. Eftal's plan completely crumbles apart as soon as the battle begins, because the kick that was supposed to be a feint actually hits Abe's face. This leaves everyone in shock, including Eftal himself, because he didn't think it would actually hit him. It was just a feint though, so he thinks it can't possibly have done that much damage. However, Abe instantly passes out, and Merlin announces that the winner is Eftal. No one understands what just happened, but Maria thinks that she just figured it out and explains that Merlin is probably trying to change their magic swordsman curriculum. After all, she's heard humans can't use magic but are fantastic at melee combat, so she thinks that's why Merlin brought a really strong swordsman. That would also explain the special treatment and why Merlin is teaching the class herself. It's the only thing that makes sense, and everyone seems to agree with it, so Eftal decides that playing along might be wiser if it helps him blend in more. With this in mind, when Maria asks him, he simply plays along and confirms it, though Abe isn't happy at all with this. Once they get home from school, Eftal and Anastasia have dinner together, but there's clearly still something in Anastasia's mind, so she decides to voice it out before even touching her food. She mentions that he easily defeated somebody really strong again today, though Eftal thinks Abe was actually really weak, but he doesn't say it. Anastasia then asks him what he would do if he ever found himself in a situation where strength didn't help. Eftal forgets the food for a moment and actually thinks about that, and when he sees Anastasia so worried, he tells her that he'd just put in the effort to make sure it worked out. Anastasia tells him that's the answer of somebody strong, and asks him if he'd be able to do that even if it were a horrible fate that he couldn't change. Eftal confirms it without a doubt and tells her that that's what he's doing right now, because he came here to fix something that nothing could fix. Anastasia isn't surprised by his answer, and she confirms once again just how amazing he really is, unlike her. Eftal tries to tell her that it isn't like that at all, but Anastasia reminds him that she's still a slave, so she really is useless and can't do anything for him. She explains that it doesn't doesn't feel right that she can't do anything to repay him, even after all he's done. With this in mind, Anastasia stands up and walks towards Eftal as she takes her clothes off, letting him know that she still hasn't done it with anyone, so if he wants her to serve him as his slave in that sense, then she can do that. Eftal immediately spits out his drink when he sees what she's doing, so he quickly panics and picks up her clothes to give them back, telling her that she doesn't need to do that. Anastasia insists and even takes off her undergarments, but Eftal keeps his eyes closed and tells her that he understands that she's grateful, but that he'd rather have her eat with him than serve him, and that's enough for him. The moment Anastasia understands that, she takes her clothes back, and Eftal tries to act like nothing happened, returning to the table and saying that the meat is getting cold. Anastasia smiles and accepts eating together with him, thanking him for everything. Now that her clothes are back on and her mind is more at ease, Anastasia can finally enjoy the food, though she can't help but let out a few tears, so Eftal tries to reassure her and asks her not to cry. The next day, the genie is crying uncontrollably as he apologizes, and Merlin informs Eftal that it seems the artifact, Raikiri, was stolen, among several other treasures. She explains that because it was Anastasia, the genie let her pass, and after that, she disappeared. Now they can confirm that the special crest under the slave one is theft, which Merlin already suspected. Eftal is aware that it finally activated, since slave crest contracts have rules. They can't give orders that would result in the slave's death or force them to commit crimes, but there is one horrible way to do those things: the special slave crest. Merely creating one of those is a crime, so Merlin doesn't understand why Anastasia has one. Eftal doesn't know either, but he clarifies that he took her in knowing that this would happen. He could just take the loss, but that wouldn't solve anything. The moment he says that, Merlin already suspects what he's planning to do, so Eftal confirms it and tells her that he'll break the contract on Anastasia's special slave crest. Merlin is alarmed by the idea alone, so she asks him if he knows what that means. She reminds him that a god once destroyed an entire small country when a special slave crest contract was broken. Eftal is already aware of this and tells her that he knows it won't be easy because the spell empowering a special slave crest is upheld by a contract beast called a god. To break the contract, he must deal with that god, and if he loses the battle, the country he once saved as the Lightning Emperor may be destroyed. Merlin asks him why he'd go to such lengths for that girl, especially knowing that she betrayed him. Eftal smiles and tells her that it is just like when he took her in, so since he took Anastasia in, he'll take care of her to the end. Besides, he knows that Anastasia isn't the type who'd be okay with betraying him, so he can't just leave her. Merlin soon understands his decision, because she knows that's just who Eftal is. However, she mentions that they don't know where Anastasia is now, so Eftal informs her that he thought this might happen and put a tracking magic on the treasure. That's how he knows that she'll be delivering her stolen items to her real master about now. With this in mind, Eftal doesn't waste any time and decides to take action, saying that he's going to get back his Anastasia. In the meantime, Anastasia takes the stolen artifacts to her master, Abe, who's very pleased to see that she stole that old hag Merlin's treasure and that kid's artifact. Abe smiles in a creepy way and praises her for her job, though he admits that he was really surprised when she came here as a transfer student. He also can't believe that she really brought him Raikiri, the weapon used by an aide to the Demon King 400 years ago. Abe even thinks that this is much better than the treasures of the Edwards family, so she did a great job. However, he asks her if she was aware that the boy of a lesser race named Eftal was so powerful, considering there's still a bruise on his face. Anastasia hesitates for a moment because she knows that Abe is the one who asked her to arrange a situation where he could face Eftal in a mock battle. She did try to warn him that Eftal was very strong, but Abe didn't even listen to her and asked her to just do as she's told. Even after this, Anastasia knows that it's useless to try to reason with Abe, so she just tells him that she didn't know Eftal was that strong. Putting that aside, she asks him if this time it is really the last time, and Abe confirms it, saying that combined with the 3 artifacts her big sister brought, this makes 5. It's 5 artifacts per generation, so this does complete the contract for her generation. Anastasia gets hopeful for a second, but Abe clarifies that the special slave crest signifies more than just that. After all, the special slave crest curse placed on her Bernova clan for the crime of killing their fellow demons won't disappear. Abe approaches Anastasia to warn her that if she ever has a kid, it will be passed on, and they'll have to do the same thing for them. He still thinks she did well for today though, so he tells her that he'll speak to his father about what they should do with her, and she'll have to wait until tomorrow morning. Anastasia decides to lie down once she's left alone, because whenever she comes here after completing a theft or to give a report, she always feels disgusted and sick, but today she feels worse because she betrayed Eftal. Despite this, she's just relieved that it is finally over now, and she can't help but think about her sister. Now, we go back in time to when Anastasia is just a little girl in her village, a place where she lives with her father. One day, her sister Tatiana decides to visit them, but Anastasia's reaction is not good at all. After all, Tatiana finally came home for once, and she's being really mean towards Anastasia, telling her that nobody wants her here at all, so she should just leave already. Tatiana reminds her that their mother died because she gave birth to her, so it is all her fault. Anastasia starts crying after this and yells at her sister, telling her that she's mean and that she doesn't care if she came back or not. Their father soon shows up to put an end to their argument, so Tatiana decides to give him some money, saying that it isn't much, but that she hopes it helps with the family finances. Her father apologizes, knowing that it must be hard for her, but Anastasia, on the other hand, isn't satisfied at all. After all, she can't believe that this is all she's brought for them after she was gone for 6 months, even though she's out having fun in those expensive-looking clothes. Tatiana clarifies that this would be more than enough if it weren't for her, so she should leave the village already. Anastasia yells at her to silence her, and then asks her why she even comes home if she hates her that much, since she doesn't work for the family, and all she does is complain and then disappear again. She feels like she doesn't even care at all, so Anastasia just tells her sister that she hates her. However, Tatiana just smiles and turns around, saying that she'll be going now. This takes Anastasia by surprise, but she just continues yelling at her because she doesn't understand why she's smiling. Clearly frustrated, she asks her to never come back because she knows that she hates her, and it doesn't make sense that she's making that face. Anastasia spends years without understanding this, and one day, 2 carriages arrive at the village. One of the carriages drops a body on the ground, and Anastasia soon realizes it is her sister's dead body. She immediately runs to its side in tears, noticing how pale and bruised her skin looks, and wondering what happened. Anastasia doesn't even have time to mourn her sister's death because a strange ring of light appears on her wrist, pulling her upwards. That's the moment she sees 2 noble demons and meets Abe for the first time. Abe asks his father if she's the next one, and the old man confirms it. Meanwhile, Anastasia's father immediately kneels on the ground and introduces her as his second daughter, saying that they can have her serve them in Tatiana's place. Abe just laughs in his face and tells him what an awful father he is, while Anastasia still doesn't understand what's going on. Abe's father then gives the order to begin the transference ritual, and they take both Anastasia and her sister's body to the site where the ritual will take place. Anastasia struggles and tries to fight back, but the man tells her that it will be over soon. Both she and her sister are placed inside a magic circle on the ground, and once all the preparations are ready, they begin the transfer of Tatiana's special slave crest on her hand to Anastasia's body. Anastasia still doesn't understand what any of this is, so Abe's father explains that Tatiana made a mistake while carrying out the contract of the special slave crest. That's why, from now on, she is a slave to them, the Portes clan. He tells her that the contract is a simple one, where someone of her clan has to offer up 5 artifacts every generation, then pass that task on to the next one, forever. Abe informs her that she'll have to infiltrate noble households as a slave and steal rare magic items. He mentions that Tatiana brought them 3, so she still owes 2, but she has to be careful not to get found out and killed like her sister was. Abe just laughs uncontrollably at this, while Anastasia realizes in tears that her sister was killed for that. That was when she learned everything. 300 years ago, her ancestors attacked and tried to rob the Portes clan, even though they were both demons, and they were defeated. For the crime of killing fellow demons, her clan was forced to bear a special slave crest until the end of time. Tatiana knew everything and had given up on everything, so she tried to deal with the curse of their criminal family all by herself. She had tried to make Anastasia hate her, so that when she was caught, it wouldn't hurt her too much. Despite this, once the transference ritual is completed, Anastasia realizes how dumb she's been, because her sister did all this for her, and she was really mean to her. There's nothing she can do to take that back now, so Anastasia just cries and apologizes to her sister, saying that she didn't realize how she felt before. Back to the present time, Anastasia is still thinking about this, even though it's been 3 years from that. She's glad that it is finally over, because it means she and her sister have done it. However, just then, Abe knocks on her door, and he soon informs her that she needs to find 5 on her own, which means she has to bring 3 more artifacts herself. Anastasia quickly tells him that this wasn't what he said before, but Abe doesn't even care about that and reminds her that as long as she has that special crest, she has to do what they say. He mentions that his father was really happy and said that if their slave is good enough to bring them Raikiri, then they can't lose her just yet. That's why she now has to bring them 3 more artifacts, then have a bunch of kids with a man they provide her so that the slave crest passes on to the next dog, and only then they will let her go. Anastasia can't believe any of this, and she now wonders why her sister died, because she risked her life to get those artifacts for them, and she did everything she could for them. Abe simply tells her that he doesn't care about her feelings at all, and he then mentions that since this is a big day for her, he will tell her the whole truth. He reveals that the story about the war for territory that happened 300 years ago and resulted in their lifetime special slave contract was actually the total opposite. After all, his ancestors were actually the ones who started the war, and they stole Branova clan's territory and title, falsely blamed their clan for killing fellow demons, and made them bear a special slave contract until the end of time. Anastasia freezes in place after hearing this, completely horrified by the truth they've been hiding this whole time. She remembers her sister and all she did for them, realizing it was all a lie from the start, which means her family and her sister paid for it with their lives without a reason. Abe just laughs in her face, saying that it is always funny to see her family's reaction when they learn the truth. He even tells her that her sister made the exact same face as her, which is even funnier to him. While he continues laughing uncontrollably, Anastasia simply stands up and excuses herself, leaving the room without another word. Abe still thinks that this is hilarious, since he knows that she is running away because she can't accept reality. Despite this, he reminds her that as long as she has that special slave crest, she is fated to automatically return to her real master once every 6 months. That's why no matter where she goes, she will never escape that that fate, and no one will be able to save her. Anastasia leaves the Portes mansion with a disturbed expression, just now realizing that she's doomed and that there is really no escape from this. Having nowhere to go, Anastasia walks aimlessly through the city at night as she thinks about Abe's words, feeling completely helpless. After a while, a group of men approach her, clearly having no good intentions, and tell her that a girl shouldn't be out alone this late at night. Anastasia doesn't say a word, and she doesn't even protest when one of them lifts her skirt to see her legs. The moment they find the slave crest on her skin, they realize the link with her master is cut, which means they can have fun with her. All of them decide to take advantage of this, of course, and Anastasia doesn't even fight back as they lead her to a dark alleyway. She just lets them do whatever they want with her, knowing that this world is filled with evil and unfairness, and that Abe was right. This special slave crest stops her from being able to die or run away, so she will never be able to escape. Knowing this has left her feeling completely hopeless, so she just doesn't care what happens anymore because this world is nothing but darkness. Anastasia simply gives up completely, but just then, all the men surrounding her suddenly drop to the ground, beaten and confused. When she opens her eyes again, all she sees is Eftel, who warns the men that Anastasia is with him and asks them to get lost. His stern expression easily intimidates all of them, so they apologize immediately and run away in fear, leaving them alone. Once they're gone, Eftel doesn't waste any time and asks Anastasia why she took Raikiri without a word. Feeling guilty, Anastasia drops to the ground and apologizes, saying that it's all because of this special slave crest. Eftel realizes he asked the wrong question, so he changes his wording and asks her why she didn't tell him about it. Anastasia nervously explains that even if she told him, the special slave crest she bears can't be removed, no matter what he does. After all, the slave contract of the crest is absolute and protected by a god, which means no single person can do anything about it. Anastasia bursts into tears as she explains, but Eftel pats her head to comfort her and asks her who cares about that god. His confidence takes Anastasia by surprise, so Eftel decides to stand up and reveals that he's Eftal Orkot, the Lightning Emperor and legendary sage. He explains that he ended his life as Eftal, the Lightning Emperor, and was reborn in this body. Anastasia tries to process this information, realizing that he's one of the legendary 4 emperors, which is almost impossible to believe. Despite this, Eftal reminds her that she's been with him for a while now, and asks her to remember what she has seen. Eftal asks her not to assume that she knows what he's capable of, and just then, Anastasia begins to remember everything he's shown her until now. The way he easily used high-level spells nobody else would be able to use, especially not a human, and the way he easily used that original 10-level spell called Eftal. Anastasia sees the resemblance now, and she finally realizes it is really him, the Lightning Emperor. Eftal explains that he took her in, and he knew everything when he did, so he's got her back, and she doesn't have to worry about a thing. Now that she knows the full truth, Anastasia cries and confesses that she can't do anything more on her own, so she asks him to please save her. She's finally asking for help after years trying to carry everything on her own, so Eftal easily accepts and tells her to leave the rest to him. The next day, a merchant arrives at the Portes mansion to see what Abe has for him, and he's completely delighted to see such a valuable item as Raikiri, since it's just what he'd expect to see from the Portes family. With just a glance, he can tell that this katana could even be considered a national treasure. Abe shamelessly brags about how super important they are as nobles, and tells him that it's just natural they'd have it. He mentions that it has a lot of historical value too, so it is truly one of a kind, and he wants to know how much he can get for it. The merchant offers 1,000 gold at first, and then increases the offer to 5,000 gold, clearly wanting to buy the katana at any cost. Abe is certainly faster than his intelligence, so he simply accepts without even trying to raise the offer, despite how valuable Raikiri really is. He hands over the national treasure just like that, telling the merchant that it's his for just 5,000 gold. Even the merchant can't believe that it was that easy, but he couldn't be happier about it, so he doesn't question it at all. He clarifies that he doesn't have that much money on him today, so he'll have to come back. Abe accepts the deal either way and tells him that he's free to drink all he'd like before he leaves today. He's not even aware that he could have gotten a better offer, but all he cares about is that he'll get 3 more treasures just like this one. After closing the deal, he decides to walk outside, clearly pleased when he thinks about the amount of money he's going to make off Anastasia. Just then, he sees her walking into the mansion grounds with her head lowered, so he decides to approach her, saying that she's back a little too soon. With a malicious smile, Abe asks her if she's accepted that she'll never escape, no matter where she goes. To his surprise, Anastasia actually talks back, and she nervously asks him to give it back. Abe can't even hear what she's saying at first, so Anastasia repeats herself and speaks more clearly, asking him to give back the katana. She's not even looking at him though, clearly still feeling a little scared. Just then, we go back to the previous night, right after she explains the whole situation to Eftal, letting him know her story. Now that he understands everything better, he simply tells her that they have to go get Raikiri back. The way he simply accepts everything and moves on takes Anastasia by surprise, so she asks him if he's not mad at her. Eftal doesn't even understand why he should be mad at her, so she reminds him that she betrayed him and stole his katana. Despite this, Eftal simply asks her if she wanted to do that, and Anastasia of course denies it, but explains that she can't escape her slave crest, and slaves like her don't think about what they want to do. Eftal questions her reasoning and asks her if that's really true, because even if her sister couldn't resist her slave crest, she spent her life trying to protect her, simply because that's what she wanted to do. Anastasia freezes in place, and for a moment she travels back to the past, feeling like a little kid and remembering the way her sister used to stand firm on her beliefs despite everything. The thought makes her drop to her knees, and that's when she realizes that they weren't able to control her sister's heart. And yet, unlike Tatiana, all she did was surrender to fate and gave up on fighting back. Anastasia can't help but feel bad at the thought, but it also fills her with determination, so she finally recognizes that she was wrong and tells Eftal that she now understands what he's been telling her. Eftal told her before that it is okay to say it when something upsets her because she can have her own will. That was the important thing he wanted her to understand, and now that she does, Anastasia decides to tell Eftal that she has a request. Now, back to the present time, Anastasia looks more determined than before, so she speaks up more firmly and finally looks Abe in the eyes, asking him to give back Eftal's katana. The moment she finishes her sentence, Abe immediately grabs her by the collar of her shirt, threateningly asking her to dare say that again. Anastasia doesn't let herself be intimidated again, so despite the position she's in right now, she doesn't hesitate to repeat her words and asks him to give back Eftal's katana. Abe easily gets irritated and pulls her closer, asking her since when she gets to tell him what to do, when it's always been the other way around. He tries to remind her what happens when a slave disobeys their master, and then tells her that he'll force her to make as many babies as he wants, and then throw her aside like a used rag. Abe asks her if she's prepared for that, but for once, Anastasia doesn't look completely scared, and there's actually some fight in her eyes, so he tells her that he doesn't like that look on her face right now. Without another word, Abe lifts her in the air and yells at her, asking her if she's trying to get herself killed. Anastasia remains firm despite the threat, knowing that this was her decision and that she can't run away from this. Standing her ground, she stares down at Abe with defiance in her eyes, deciding not to run away anymore. Anastasia grips his arm with strength and firmly tells him that she is done doing what his family wants. This easily gets on his nerves, but Abe tries to control himself and simply tells her that he doesn't know what that boy from the lesser race told her, but he admits that she's got guts. Abe drops her on the ground and then takes Raikiri, just to hit Anastasia with the scabbard of the katana. With no mercy, he strikes her in the ribs repeatedly, not holding back, just to make her suffer as he insults her. After a while beating her up, Abe stops for a moment just to look down on her and ask her why she would count on a lesser race to save her. He uses the scabbard to poke her face, but even after all that torture, Anastasia still looks at him with defiance, making it clear that she's still resisting and that she hasn't given up. Abe gets irritated and quickly discards the scabbard, holding only the katana now, and asking her how long she can keep it up. He tells her that a dumb slave like her needs somebody to teach her who her master is, so he will gladly be the one to do that. With a certainly disgusting expression, he licks the blade of the katana and reassures her, saying that he will stop just before she dies. Anastasia actually looks scared this time, because the horrible smile on his face gives her the creeps, and it means he's up to no good. Abe's smile turns even more wicked as he tells her that he will start by slicing up that bratty little face of hers, just so that she doesn't defy him anymore. With no hesitation, he raises the katana in the air and then swings it down with force, clearly not holding back. Anastasia flinches in fear, but just before the blade touches her, Eftal steps in and simply stops the katana with his bare hand, telling her that she did great. Just then, we go back to the previous night once again, when Anastasia explains what her request is. She tells Eftal that what happened this time was her fault, so she needs to atone for it herself. Eftal isn't very convinced about this, and he doesn't like the idea, but Anastasia insists and asks him if he'll let her try to atone by herself. Since that is what she wants right now, Eftal has no choice but to accept with a smile. However, back to the present time, he's not happy at all with the current situation, especially after he saw Abe beating her up like that, and after he heard his disgusting words and threats. Eftal tells Anastasia that she's atoned enough, so she finally snaps out of her shock and thanks him with tears in her eyes, apologizing to him. Abe interrupts the moment with irritation, addressing Eftal as lesser race and asking him if he really came all this way just for her. With an even more ridiculous smile, he mocks him and lets him know that Anastasia is his slave, so he can't do anything about it. Despite this, Abe's expression turns wicked as he tells him that since he's already here, he will slice him up as well. He begins to laugh uncontrollably after saying this, having no idea what is coming. Eftal looks seriously pissed now, but he doesn't even try to hide it and tells him that he is never going to touch Anastasia again. As soon as he finishes that sentence, he punches Abe right in his face, deforming it for a few seconds before sending him flying away. Abe clearly wasn't prepared for that, so he crashes into the ground and lands on his face pathetically. He quickly stands back up, angrier than ever before because Eftal hit him not once, but twice now, which surely hurts his pride. Abe yells at him in anger, telling him that he is going to pay for that, and that he is going to kill him without a doubt. His wicked smile returns after he quickly composes himself, and he warns both Eftal and Anastasia that neither of them is leaving this place alive. Abe reminds them where they are, and informs them that this whole place is his mansion, the territory of the Port's clan, clan, one of the most important demon clans. He explains that they both have entered his territory without permission, so they can't complain if his 300 guards kill them now. Without wasting any time, Abe calls all of his guards, and both Eftal and Anastasia are completely surrounded in a matter of seconds. The guards look mostly like bandits or mercenaries even, but Abe proudly exclaims that he paid good money for them since they are all masters of magic, martial arts, and swordsmanship. With that in mind, he's pretty sure they can't even scratch them, and it makes him feel invincible. Abe smiles creepily yet again, and then orders his elite troops to kill the invader, the one of a lesser race. With no hesitation, all the guards run towards him at once with their weapons, and Abe is still very confident at this point, but his smile disappears from his face as soon as Eftal raises his hand to cast a level 7 spell called Chaos Weed. At first, Abe doesn't even believe what he's seeing, so he just laughs mockingly, pretty amused by the fact that a lesser race, a human, is really trying to use magic, not to mention an impossible level 7. Unable to hold his laugh, Abe tells him that he surely meant level 1, since even that is too much for a lesser race, and he knows that he's going to be dead by the time he finishes that incantation anyway. Abe suddenly freezes in place, completely shocked when he sees the magic circle appearing in front of Eftal's hand, letting him know that it is indeed a level 7 spell, and that he didn't even need an incantation. Only with that spell, Eftal easily blows all the guards away with ease, not even letting them get close. That spell alone is also enough to blow away the whole mansion and Abe himself, leaving nothing but a deserted terrain. Abe screams the moment he sees what happened to his mansion, but he simply falls to the ground, unable to do anything about it. Everything is dead silent now, and even Anastasia is too shocked to say anything after witnessing such a thing. Although Abe is now lying on the ground, clearly beaten up, he stubbornly tells Eftal that he hasn't beaten him. He clarifies that they have forgotten about something really important, but before he can say what it is, Merlin arrives just then, interrupting him. She completely ignores him and informs Eftal that it seems the items stolen from her mansion have already been sold. Merlin also mentions that she has been looking into the Portes family, but there are nothing but bad rumors about them, apparently. The rumors speak of them stealing and selling artifacts and smuggling illicit substances. They were deeply connected to the local mafia as well, from what she heard. Eftal is not surprised about this, since he did see people who looked like mafia among his guards, though he blew them all away already. After hearing this, Merlin decides to walk towards Abe, who's surprisingly still conscious, but on the ground. Once she has his attention, Merlin informs him that he doesn't belong at her academy anymore, because she is expelling him under her authority as dean. Abe is shocked to hear this, so shocked that he finally passes out on the ground. Now that it is all over, Anastasia returns the katana to Eftal and tells him that she is really sorry. Eftal smiles and takes Raikiri back, telling her that she doesn't have to worry about it anymore. He then asks her if she feels a little better now, and the question takes her by surprise, making her think about everything she's gone through until this very moment. Anastasia confirms it, completely moved to tears, and tells him that she won't give up on herself anymore, because no matter what her fate is, it is up to her to live her own life. Eftal is happy that she finally understands that, because it is what he has been trying to tell her from the beginning. Even Merlin is glad to know that she gets it now, and Anastasia looks a lot happier, so she thanks Eftal for everything. When they return home, Merlin informs Eftal that she's reported the Portes family to the Noble Inquisition organization, so they'll start their investigation soon. Eftal thanks her, because that takes care of Abe, and now it's on to the real work. Anastasia doesn't know what he's talking about, so Eftal reminds her that she still has her special slave crest. Since he never told her what he intends to do, Eftal informs her that he's going to forcibly remove her special slave crest. Anastasia is really surprised by this, because that means he'll fight the contract beast. When Eftal confirms it, she quickly reminds him that the contract beast is a god, and it's said to be so powerful that a whole country couldn't fight it. He still doesn't change his mind, already knowing that, so Anastasia insists and explains that the reason the contract is made with a god is because it means humans can't do anything about it. Eftal remains firm on his decision, and once again tells her that he'll save her, which means he's not planning to back down. He asks her not to worry about a thing, and assures her that he will take care of things. Without wasting more time, Eftal goes to the basement to get ready, and in the meantime, Anastasia decides to meet with the genie to apologize for what she did, since she betrayed his trust when she stole Raikiri. Despite how sorry she is, the genie doesn't budge, still mad about what happened. Merlin silently asks him to take it easy on her, so the genie finally gives in and forgives Anastasia, saying that if Eftal and Merlin have forgiven her, then it's not his place to say anything. Even so, he gives her a severe warning and makes it clear that next time she wants to come here, she has to bring one of them with her, because she's not getting inside alone anymore. Anastasia quickly accepts the new terms, so he finally relaxes and admits that she's got guts for tricking a genie. Once that's settled, Anastasia decides to ask him if it'd be okay for her to clean the treasury. This clearly takes him by surprise, but the genie allows her to do that, so Anastasia starts cleaning the treasury with Merlin's help, since she can't leave her alone in there now. As they clean the place, Merlin complains because she thinks it doesn't even need cleaning. Anastasia explains that she caused them a lot of trouble, so she's been trying to think of something she could do to help out. Merlin clarifies that this is more trouble, because now she has to pitch in too. Putting that aside, Merlin warns her that she must be careful, because there are dangerous treasures here it's best not to touch. There are things used in ancient rituals, cursed objects, and all kinds of things. Anastasia is a little intimidated when she mentions the cursed objects, and Merlin mentions that there's something she's had since she was a kid, but she doesn't really know what it does. The moment she picks up the box she's talking about, Merlin panics and screams when a rat suddenly jumps at her, making her fall over Anastasia. A strange powder comes out of the box and covers them both, and as soon as they take a look at each other, Anastasia and Merlin realize that they've turned into kids. Merlin assumes that they activated the curse because they accidentally opened the box, so she immediately tries casting the level 6 spell, Seraph Dispel. However, even after trying several times, nothing happens at all, and Anastasia notices that the genie is gone now. That's the moment Merlin realizes that she lost her magic, so the situation couldn't be worse. Anastasia suggests they ask Eftal for help, but Merlin rejects the idea and reminds her that he's in the middle of preparing for an important ritual, which means they can't bother him right now. Anastasia is still clearly worried, so Merlin reassures her and tells her that she's Eftal's greatest student, and her library has all kinds of information on curses. Despite that, Merlin soon remembers the fact that they're not at home because she took all those books to the academy for research. Having no other choice, she tells Anastasia that they're going to the academy to get those books. That idea sounds really risky, so Anastasia warns her that if somebody finds out she was cursed, it'll damage her reputation. Merlin clarifies that it'd be much more embarrassing if Eftal found out, so they just have to be careful so no one catches them. Without wasting more time, the two of them go to the academy in secret and hide behind some bushes as they figure out what to do. Anastasia asks her where the things they're looking for are, wondering if they're in the library. Merlin tells her that they're actually in the dean's office, so they have to get there without being seen somehow. As soon as she says that, one of the guards manages to hear her and immediately starts searching the area. Both Merlin and Anastasia go completely silent, but the guard slowly gets closer to where they are. Right before he sees them, another guard shows up to ask him what's going on, so the man explains that he saw something move, and he's sure somebody's here. He continues searching for them, asking whoever's there to come out at once. Not knowing what to do, Anastasia panics and decides to imitate a cat, which is surprisingly convincing enough for the guard to let it go. As soon as the guard leaves, even Merlin admits that her cat impression is excellent, even though she wasn't expecting something like that. Anastasia thanks her, and the two of them quickly keep moving through the academy grounds. She asks her how they'll get into the dean's office after this, and Merlin reassures her, saying that she's got the key, so there's nothing to worry about. Once they infiltrate the academy building, they sneak through the halls without being seen, and they quickly hide when they see two students walking by. One of the guys mentions that the transfer student's a real brat, so no one really knows what Merlin is thinking. The other guy tells him that Maria was saying something about improving the magic swordsman curriculum. However, his friend doesn't agree, and instead says that Abe was right because he's sure she's definitely taken a special liking to that Eftal kid. Merlin listens quietly to their whole conversation, and she doesn't really care about what they're saying until one of them calls her an old hag. Without thinking, she runs to the middle of the hallway to yell at them, asking them who they're calling an old hag. This takes them by surprise, but the moment they turn around to see who said that, the hallway is completely empty. This leaves them confused because they're pretty sure they heard the dean's voice just now, and she's supposed to be off today. They quickly let it go when they notice how late it is, and Anastasia makes sure to keep Merlin silent until they finally leave. That was really close, but Merlin is still mad about their comment, so she says that they're in for a lecture later. Just then, Maria suddenly comes out of one of the classrooms, but she doesn't recognize them at all, so she's just confused to see kids in the academy. Anastasia panics and asks Merlin what to do, but Maria doesn't give them any time to figure it out and approaches them to ask what they're doing in a place like this. After taking a proper look at Merlin, Maria mentions that she feels like they've met somewhere and that she kind of looks like the dean. Anastasia panics and speaks without thinking again, saying that they're Merlin's relatives. Fortunately, that's convincing enough for Maria, who says that it explains the resemblance. She still asks them what they're doing here, so Merlin explains that they were on their way to the dean's office and got lost. Maria assumes that they're on an errand, but Merlin clarifies that they're going to study. Anastasia plays along and explains that they have homework to do, so they're looking into old curses, and Merlin told them they could read the book in her office. Maria finds it a little strange that they're going to read one of Merlin's really complicated books, but she doesn't even question it and praises them for studying so hard, even at their age. Both Merlin and Anastasia are surprised by her reaction, and they're even more shocked when Maria offers to take them to the dean's office. She doesn't seem to suspect anything, but Merlin still would like to get rid of her as quickly as possible. They don't have much of a choice though, so they just let her escort them to the dean's office. Once they get there, Anastasia thanks Maria for her help, and Merlin tells her that they've borrowed the key so they can go in themselves. Maria decides to leave after that, simply telling them to work hard at their studies. Merlin is relieved when she finally leaves because everything was successful in the end. However, as soon as she tries to use the key to head inside, she suddenly remembers the fact that no one can get past this lock without magic. Having no other choice, they quickly chase after Maria again to ask her for help, but the way Merlin addresses her almost gives her away, so she instantly changes her speech and calls her big sis, like any kid would do. Maria is surprisingly touched by that, so she doesn't hesitate to help them out, opening the door for them and telling them that they can come to her if they ever need anything, because she's their big sis. Merlin and Anastasia keep calling her that, and and thank her for her help, clarifying that they're good now. When Maria leaves, Merlin sighs in relief and admits that not having magic is tough, so they were lucky they ran into her. Without wasting any time, she starts searching for the book in her office, and she soon finds it sitting on her desk. However, Merlin gets frustrated again when she remembers that only someone with magic can open these old grimoires. They have no choice but to ask Maria for help yet again, still addressing her as their big sis. The moment she sees them running to her like that, Maria is happy to know that they need her again, because she feels like a proud big sister. She gladly accepts to help them and opens the book for them, though she admits that she's surprised the book they were after was a grimoire. Maria doesn't question it and simply asks them to let her know if there are any other books they want to read, saying that she'll be waiting right here. Merlin and Anastasia get a little worried the moment she says that she'll stay, but Maria explains that if they want to read another book, they're going to need somebody's help again. They can't really argue against that logic, so they let Maria stay with them, asking for her help every time they need to open a book. Their research continues even after nightfall, and they continue reading several grimoires to find their curse. After several hours of reading non-stop, Anastasia starts getting a bit sleepy, but that's when Merlin suddenly exclaims that she found it. She quickly reads the grimoire and explains that to break the white curse and banish the smoke that surrounds the soul, they must bathe themselves in the scent of fresh, ripe fruit. Anastasia doesn't know what that means, and Merlin tells her that the book doesn't say any more than that, but she thinks the fruit shown there is Unitron. When Maria hears that, she assumes that they want Unitron and tells them that there's some in the greenhouse. She even asks them if she should get some for them, but Merlin tells her that they can go themselves. Anastasia thanks her for all her help, and Maria simply asks them not to stay out too late. Once she leaves, Merlin realizes how nice Maria actually is, and Anastasia admits that she's kind of cold in the classroom, but she's apparently willing to help people in trouble. When they go to the greenhouse, Anastasia climbs onto Merlin's shoulders to reach the Unitron on the tree there. After a lot of effort, she manages to grab one, so they repeat the same process until they have a basket full of them. They return home with the Unitron, feeling completely exhausted, but relieved to know that they'll be able to go back to normal after all. Despite this, Merlin doesn't exactly know what they are supposed to do with the fruit, and Anastasia even wonders if they have to eat them. To test it out, Merlin hands her a Unitron, but the moment Anastasia takes a bite out of it, she immediately exclaims just how sour and bitter it is. Merlin can't help but laugh, so Anastasia complains when she realizes that she knew and let her eat it anyway. While they're bickering, Eftal suddenly shows up and mentions that it looks like they've become friends, so he asks them to let him join in. Unable to hide it any longer, the two of them explain what happened, informing him about the situation. Merlin apologizes, because she knows that he's getting ready for the battle with the contract beast. Anastasia also apologizes, but Eftal clarifies that he's not mad or anything, and he just wishes they had come to him. Merlin then mentions the method to break the curse, and asks him if he knows how they have to use the Unitron they collected. Eftal confirms that he knows what to do with it, and tells them that they don't have to eat it. Without giving any explanations, he says that they will all go to the hot springs tomorrow, which takes them by surprise. The next day at the hot springs, now that they understand how it works, Merlin and Anastasia rush to jump in the water, where several Unitron fruits are floating around. As soon as they do this, they finally go back to normal, successfully breaking the curse. Merlin is relieved to be back and admits that this is impressive, because they changed back immediately. Eftal soon joins them in the hot springs, saying that he's glad that it worked, and that they can really smell the Unitron. Now they understand what the book meant by bathing in its scent, though they didn't think that the hot springs ticket they won during the treasure hunt would come in handy like this. Anastasia admits that she's never been to a hot springs before, but it feels really great, and she's actually enjoying it. Eftal tells her that it might help with breaking her special slave crest as well, so she must relax as best she can and purify her body. While she's doing that, Merlin suddenly decides to stand up, telling Eftal that she'll wash his back, because she's his favorite student after all. The moment she stands up, Eftal can see absolutely everything, so he panics and asks her not to do that. Merlin plays dumb and asks him what the problem is, clearly taking advantage of the situation. Anastasia easily sees that and decides not to stay behind, so she exclaims that she's his new student and thinks that she should do it instead. Eftal panics even more when she also stands up, letting him see everything, but Merlin complains and asks her since when she is his student. Anastasia tells her that she's his student from this very moment, but Merlin refuses to accept that. Eftal can't help but smile when he sees them bickering like that again, but he soon loses his patience and asks them to shut up and get in the water already. Once they calm down, the two of them accept the fact that they can't do everything Eftal can, because they worked so hard, and he still solved everything instantly. Anastasia mentions that he told her that he's the reincarnation of the legendary Lightning Emperor, and she honestly doesn't really know how she feels about it. A lot makes sense if he's the reincarnation of the Lightning Emperor, but reincarnation just seems impossible to believe. Merlin understands that, but explains that the feeling she had when she touched him with her magic made it very clear that it had to be him. She also asks her not to try to judge her master with common sense, and Anastasia can't help but laugh at that, because both Merlin and Eftal say the same things, which makes her think that they're a lot alike. Merlin nervously explains that she's looked up to him for over 4 centuries, so it shouldn't be a surprise. Anastasia admits that she's kind of jealous, since she knows a lot about him. However, Merlin confesses that she's honestly jealous of her because Eftal is giving her a lot of special treatment, like breaking her crest. Anastasia tells her that the thought that something might happen to him scares her, but Merlin reminds her that Eftal has always been there to help when she's in trouble. He isn't the kind of person who wavers once he's made up his mind, so when he makes a decision, he sees it through to the end. That's just who he is after all, so Merlin is sure he'll be able to break her special slave crest, and she shouldn't worry about a thing, because she'll be there too. Anastasia feels a little more at ease after hearing that, so they soon go back home to talk to Eftal, who asks them if people in this era really can't use powerful magic. The history books say that magic itself got weaker, but they didn't say why after all. Merlin is surprised to know that he hasn't heard about the Magia Burst, and explains that he's essentially the only person alive now who can use level 10 magic. It happened 10 years after the death of the Lightning Emperor. A mysterious stone monolith was found in a ruin belonging to an ancient magical super-civilization, and it was called the Magia Monolith. At the time, a special investigation team was sent to see what influence it had on magical aptitudes, but then, suddenly, something happened. On the second day of the investigation, a strange, powerful explosion occurred in the vicinity. The Magia Monolith was destroyed, and a wave of magical pollution covered the whole world. As a result, powerful spells of level 9 and above became impossible to cast, and magic itself grew weaker. That was the Magia Burst, and now Eftal understands that because he reincarnated after it happened, he can still use high-level magic. He was actually hoping Merlin would be able to use high-level magic during the battle with the contract beast, but now he can see that won't be possible. Despite that, he clarifies that no matter what hardships it entails, they're still going to save Anastasia. He reincarnated and is here now after all, which means he can use level 10 spells. With that in mind, he asks Merlin to help him with the ritual, because they are going to rip off that special slave crest by force and wipe the floor with that god.